Chapter 2747. The Divine King clone shouted coldly. Just one word exploded in the sky like thunder. In the next instant, the surrounding sky that had just healed directly turned into a void. A surge of dark supreme divine power enveloped a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Under the terrifying divine power, Ji Tianqing did not have the chance to dodge at all and was directly suppressed. Swoosh! His 10,000 feet tall body was actually like a weathered rock mottled with age. Immediately after, his body collapsed with a bang, turning into a billion grains of sand and dust, scattering in the darkness. The divine body that he had just condensed and repaired actually directly weathered away, turning into countless dust. Not even a piece of complete flesh and bone, not a drop of golden divine blood was left. What kind of terrifying method was this? However, after the Divine King clone executed this divine ability, the golden light all over his body dissipated by more than half. His body became even thinner. His strength also weakened rapidly, only having 60% of his strength left. Swoosh! A large cloud of sand and dust scattered in the darkness and disappeared very quickly. In the darkness, only a walnut-sized light bead was left, releasing a dense divine light. Just as the Divine King clone said, he destroyed Ji Tianqing's physical body, leaving only the divine soul behind. But Ji Tianqing's divine soul had long fused together with the heaven-mending bead. The Divine King clone was just about to execute a capturing technique to capture Ji Tianqing's divine soul. Suddenly seeing that dense white bead clearly, his body immediately trembled, both eyes revealing a look of surprise. This divine bead is actually a Divine King-level treasure? No wonder. No wonder this boy has such heaven-defying talent and even grasped so many top-notch divine abilities. Obtaining a king-level divine artifact in the mortal world. What kind of heaven-defying lucky chance is this? The Divine King clone sensed the aura of a king-level divine artifact from the heaven-mending bead, and immediately came to a realization. He immediately fired out a giant palm of golden light, grabbing towards the heaven-mending bead. However, the heaven-mending bead emitted a dazzling white light, turning into 3 sword blades, slashing towards the Divine King clone. Clearly Ji Tianqing's divine soul was still there. Not dead, nor unconscious. He manipulated the heaven-mending bead with his divine soul, releasing a vast divine power to deal with the Divine King clone. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The blazing white sword pierced through the air, aiming straight for the Divine King's clone's vital point. However, the Divine King's clone remained fearless as he sneered. Ha ha ha. It's just a king-grade divine artifact that has exhausted all of its power. What can it do to me? That was right. The heaven-mending pearl was once a king-grade divine artifact, but its power had long been exhausted. After Ji Tianqing had obtained it, he had helped it absorb all kinds of energy over the years, which allowed it to regain its luster. However, its power was still less than 10% of a king-grade god artifacts. At the same time as he sneered, the Divine King's avatar brazenly waved both of his palms, exploding with extreme power as he ruthlessly hacked at the heaven-mending pearl. Heaven-shattering. His huge palms emitted a dazzling red light, as if they were giant axes that could split the heavens. They instantly shattered the 3 blazing white sword blades. Immediately after, the crimson palms, which were as large as mountains, fiercely struck the heaven-mending pearl. Boom! Following a muffled explosion, the heaven-mending bead shone with a brilliant white light and was sent flying thousands of miles away. After the white light that soared into the sky was extinguished, the heaven-mending orb became dim. It was obvious that it had been severely injured. Although it did not shatter on the spot, there were no cracks. However, more than half of its power had been used up, and it became dim again. Ji Tianqing's soul, which was inside the heaven-mending orb, also suffered an unprecedented injury and fell into a coma. This emperor wants to see what this divine orb is. The Divine King's avatar's figure became even fainter, and his power became even weaker. However, he was still able to kill Ji Tianqing several times. His figure flashed across thousands of miles of darkness and appeared in front of the heaven-mending orb. Just as he was about to reach out and grab the heaven-mending orb, an unbelievable scene appeared. Swoosh! The heaven-mending orb emitted a dazzling white light, and it instantly disappeared into the darkness. The Divine King's avatar's huge palm grabbed empty air, and he unwillingly withdrew it. Damn it! In the end he still escaped. As expected of a king-grade divine artifact, it actually has a consciousness to protect its owner. The divine king's avatar was filled with anger, and he gritted his teeth hatefully. He used his divine perception to search a radius of 60 million miles, but he did not find Ji Tianqing and the heaven-mending orb. Only then did he turn around and leave. After all, the heaven-mending orb had disappeared into thin air. It had already left planet Heaven Trader, and its whereabouts were unknown. The divine king's avatar did not know where to look for it. He lowered his head and glanced at his dimming golden body, which was getting thinner and thinner. He hurriedly flew in the direction of the Arch Palace. This emperor doesn't have much time left. I have to deal with all the future troubles. He muttered in a low voice, and with a single step, he crossed thousands of miles and headed straight for the endless sea realm. At the same time, in the Sea of Clouds where the Arch Palace was located, the battle was still ongoing. The once magnificent Arch Palace had long been reduced to hundreds of miles of ruins. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and experts had also been killed by Yun Yao and the others. At this moment only Yun Shuiyan, her son, and Yun Yao were high up in the sky. 5 true god experts and 4 divine beasts were attacking Yun Shuiyan and her son with all their might, and they had completely gained the upper hand. The two sides had already exchanged tens of thousands of blows. The world-destroying battle caused hundreds of thousands of miles of land to sink and the sky to collapse. Yun Yao and the others were not injured. Only the 4 divine beasts, Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang, had suffered minor injuries. Tianshu had long been severely injured and was on the verge of death. His limbs had been cut off, and he looked like a stick covered in purple blood. His divine soul was also severely injured, and he was in a dazed, dizzy and blurry state. If Yun Shuiyan had not been protecting him, he would have been hacked to death and torn to pieces. Yun Shuiyan's strength had already reached 30 times that of a peak true god. However, she had been besieged for so long, and she had to divert her attention to protect Tianshu. She had long been severely injured. She was no longer as graceful and elegant as before. Her long hair was messy, and her clothes were ragged. Her entire body was covered in icy blue blood and wounds. Dozens of wounds were so deep that her bones could be seen. She had also used up more than half of her divine power, and her combat strength was constantly weakening. She had no choice but to take the severely injured Tianshu with her, and flee into the distance while fighting. She was anxious, angry, and humiliated. She was the reincarnation of a divine lord, an expert who wanted to break through to the divine king realm. When had she fallen to such a miserable state? However, the current situation left her in despair. She could not see a chance to escape. She could only pray in her heart that the divine king's clone would quickly finish off Ji Tianqing and return to save her and her son. Perhaps her prayers were finally effective. Just as her injuries were worsening and her strength was weakening, a golden light lit up in the distant sky. The sacred golden light was filled with supreme divine power, illuminating the world. Yun Shuiyan thought she was seeing things or was hallucinating. However, in the next moment, a golden figure that was thousands of miles tall appeared high in the sky. Swoosh! The figure that was thousands of miles tall had 3 eyes and 6 divine wings. Its entire body exuded a divine power that could subdue the world. I'm not seeing things. The divine king has indeed returned. There's finally hope for us. When Yun Shuiyan saw the figure clearly, she was so excited that her blood surged. She revealed an expression of relief. Chapter 2748. Of course, Tianshu also saw the godly king's clone. Unfortunately, his injuries were too severe and he was like a pile of mush. No matter how surprised he was, he could not shout. Yun Shuiyan and her son also noticed the godly king's clone. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others also saw the godly king's clone. Everyone and the 4 godly beasts were stunned for a moment. Then they looked extremely worried and anxious. Is that the backer of the Heaven Punisher, the godly king from the upper realm? Although it's just a godly king's clone, his divine power is so powerful. There was no news of Big Brother Tianqing before. He must have been hunted down by the godly king's clone. Now that the godly king's clone has appeared, doesn't that mean Big Brother Tianqing? Impossible. Master is invincible. He won't die. Everyone thought of the most important problem, and their expressions changed. The worry and anxiety in their hearts were about to explode. At this moment, the godly king's clone looked down at Yunyao Jiku and the 4 godly beasts. 2 half-step heavenly gods and 3 peak true gods? And a black dragon, a heavenly fox, a glazed fire dragon. That big fish, could it be a Kuan? The godly king's clone was very sharp. He instantly saw through everyone's strength and the identities of the 4 godly beasts. Even though he was extremely powerful and could control thousands of gods, he could not help but twitch his mouth. His eyes were filled with shock. There are actually so many powerhouses and such rare divine beasts in this ant-like mortal world? Moreover, those ants and the 4 godly beasts are Ji Tianqing's accomplices. The godly king's clone was also shocked. Yunyao and Jiku were half-step heavenly gods, while Bai Long Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang were peak true gods. There were definitely a bunch of them in the godly realm. To the godly king they were all ants. He did not even have the interest to look at them. But don't forget, this is the mortal world. This godly king had spent many years and used many special methods to cultivate the Heaven Punisher Great Emperor in Tianshu, a half-step heavenly god and a peak true god. Now there were 2 half-step heavenly gods and 3 peak true gods among Ji Tianqing's accomplices. Most importantly, among the 3 peak true gods, there were 2 children. One was incomparably handsome, while the other was as delicate as carved jade. Both of them looked no more than 10 years old. This was too terrifying. Even in the god realm, geniuses with such extraordinary aptitudes could be counted on one's fingers. There were also the 4 godly beasts. Black dragons and glazed fire dragons were very common in the dragon world, so there was no need to mention them. Of course, the godly beast was godly king was godly god course. As for that fat-head blue fish that looked a little silly, its origins were even more terrifying. The godly was godly godly was godlies was godly king god? Godly gaga godly s godly god. The godly king's clone stared at the godly king fervently. He suddenly wanted to raise a pet as a mount. He had even thought of a name. Big Fish. When Big Fish reached adulthood, he could ride it and roam the godly realm. That way, he would be able to intimidate billions of godly tribes. To put it bluntly, that would be even cooler. I want that godly king god. The godly king's clone narrowed his eyes as a greedy sneer appeared on his face. Then he looked at Yunyao Jiku the white dragon and the others. Although Yunyao and Jiku were very beautiful, they were as pure as ice and as pure as jade and as elegant as fairies. Unfortunately, the honorable godly king had seen tens of thousands of beautiful goddesses, saintesses and top socialites. Moreover, he was not a human. In terms of aesthetics, he had a completely different concept from humans. Therefore, he was not interested in Yunyao and Jiku's beauty. His gaze stopped on everyone's armor. The armor that was as black as ink looked ordinary. However, the godly king's clone could sense that the armor and weapons in their hands contained an invisible divine power. The divine power aura made him curious and eager. The material of the armor and weapons should be the boundless divine stone that Haotian mentioned, right? How interesting. I have to study it carefully. With that, the godly king's clone's target was set. He would spare the godly king god's life and bring it back to the godly realm. He would kill the others and the 3 divine beasts, take their weapons and armor, and bring them back for study. It was a perfect outcome. Therefore, the godly king's clone glanced at Yun Shuiyan, who was covered in blood, and said indifferently, "Yun Shuiyan, you may leave." "Yes, your majesty." Yun Shuiyan was overjoyed. She quickly bowed and left with the unconscious Tianshu. The godly king's clone was going to take action personally. Then all of this would end soon. Moreover, in the past few hundred years, she had only reported her name once when she participated in the grand sacrificial ceremony. The godly king remembered it. What did this mean? The godly king still paid attention to her. In fact, his attention and expectations for her were higher than those for the great Emperor Haotian. Yun Shuiyan thought to herself, don't talk about the fact that the great Emperor Haotian isn't extinct yet. Even if we are, I Yun Shuiyan will have the support of a supreme godly king when I ascend to the upper realm. My future path to godhood will be smooth sailing. At that moment the godly king's clone looked at Yunyao Jiku and the others. He said indifferently, "Other than that Kuan, the rest of you can commit suicide." His tone was very casual, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. There was no false bravado, nor was there any pretense of authority. This was because there was no need for a paragon like him, who stood at the peak of the heavenly realm. However, even ants had lives and they had the right to struggle for survival. Moreover, the ants in the sky were the most powerful ones among the trillions of ants. In our dictionary there is only death in battle. There is no such thing as suicide. Yunyao looked coldly at the godly king's clone as she spoke in a sonorous voice. "Bastard! Where is my big brother Tianxing? What did you do to him?" Jika's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He held the origin stone divine spear and stared at the godly king's clone. Bai Long licked his lips as his white hair danced in the wind. He sneered with a bloodthirsty expression. "You are just a mere godly king's clone. How dare you be so arrogant? You have descended to the mortal realm and gone through so many battles. How much strength do you have left? I would like to see how much strength you have compared to your main body." The youngest Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang were also filled with grief and anger. They stared at the godly king's clone with bloodshot eyes. "Bastard! Give us back our father." Everyone's willpower was firm, and their resistance was resolute. Moreover, they did not fear the godly king's clone at all. This surprised the godly king's clone. He thought to himself, "These ants seem to have known that I would send my clone?" However, he thought about it from another perspective. This was not important. After all, it did not matter if those ants resisted or not. Chapter 2749. Of course, the strong often had some wicked interests that ordinary people didn't have. For example, when he was chasing after Ji Tianxing, he didn't immediately use a big move to kill Ji Tianxing. Instead, he acted like a cat toying with a mouse, forcing Ji Tianxing into a desperate situation and forcing him to use all his trump cards. During this process, the Divine King clone discovered many of Ji Tianxing's secrets. At the same time, he also enjoyed making Ji Tianxing die in the most desperate and helpless situation. It seemed like Ji Tianxing had only disappeared and wasn't completely dead. When he thought of this, the Divine King clone was somewhat unwilling. He felt a little uneasy and felt that there might be variables in the future. Therefore, another idea popped up in his mind. In order to make up for the unwillingness in his heart, and also to prevent future variables, his gaze fell on Ji Wuhan and Ji Wushuang. Just now, these two brats seem to have said that Ji Tianxing is their father? Haha. Interesting. The Divine King clone stared deeply at Ji Tianxing and muttered to himself, as expected, he is 80% similar to Ji Tianxing. He is so serious and cold at such a young age. Even his aptitude and talent are so outstanding. It would be too much of a pity to kill such a perfect unpolished gem. Why don't I bring him and Tianshu back together and train them? They will definitely become this emperor's sharp blades in the future. Haha. Even if there are variables in the future and Ji Tianxing can go to the God realm to seek revenge. Just think about how the father and son would have to fight each other to the death when they meet. Just how pleasing would that be? When he thought of this, the Divine King clone's sneer became even more sinister. After making up his mind, he didn't waste any more words and raised his palms to attack. However, he didn't expect that Yunyao, Jiku, and the others were even faster and actually took the initiative to attack. Great Qiankuan sword. Raging flames incinerate the heavens. Space-splitting dragon shadow sword. Endless stars sword. In that instant, everyone unleashed their strongest powers, unleashing their strongest killing moves to surround and attack the God King's clone. The gigantic sword that could split the heavens and earth, the five-colored divine flames that surged and covered the sky, the white dragon phantom that traversed the horizon, and the gigantic sword that descended from the sky. There were also 4 divine beasts that attacked with all their might, releasing heaven-burning raging flames, icy light, and divine light shadows. Instantly, the area within a radius of 50,000 kilometers was illuminated by a dazzling divine light. Surging divine power filled the entire area. The entire area was in complete chaos. Hiding thousands of miles away, Yun Xuan couldn't be bothered to treat Tianshu's injuries. She hurriedly retreated thousands of miles away. Facing the attacks of the 5 experts and the 4 divine beasts, the God King's clone did not dodge. That would be too embarrassing, and there was no need to do so. The God King's clone frowned when he saw their divine arts and sensed the attributes of their divine power. A look of surprise flashed through his eyes. These ants and divine beasts seemed to have had some fortuitous encounters. Of course, the God King's clone could tell that Yunyao was no ordinary person. She was like the embodiment of the world. Jiku was also extraordinary. He could control the Phoenix race's Nirvana divine flame, and he probably had the ability to become immortal. The other 3 people and 4 divine beasts also had their own special abilities. Of course, they could only surprise the God King's clone. That was all. A bunch of ants. You deserved to die, muttered the God King's clone indifferently. He raised his palms and slammed them down. Boom! Crack! Instantly, 2 gigantic crimson palms that blotted out the sky slammed into the divine light shadows that filled the sky. There was a loud explosion, and the light shadows that filled the sky collapsed and exploded. The white dragon phantom and the gigantic sword that traversed the horizon, the divine light shadows that were as large as mountains, the divine flames that blotted out the sky. They were all shattered by a single palm. In the face of absolute power, no matter how flashy a divine art was, it was useless. With a loud rumble, the divine art attacks of the 4 divine beasts and the divine beasts dissipated along with the 2 gigantic crimson palms. Everyone's attacks were easily neutralized by the God King's clone. However, the God King's clone only used 70% of his strength. He was unable to injure Yunyao, Jiku, and the others. Such an outcome made Yun Shuoyan, who was thousands of miles away, frown. That's not right. With His Majesty's strength, he should be able to severely injure them in one move. Although Yun Shuoyan knew that the 5 experts and the 4 divine beasts would be able to beat her to a pulp if they joined forces, it would be a tragic sight. However, she stubbornly believed that the God King should be able to crush everything in his path. No matter how strong the opponent was, no matter how many there were, he should be able to crush them all. And the current situation clearly did not match the God King's clone's strength. She frowned and thought for a moment, revealing a look of worry. Could it be that the God King's clone had already expended most of his strength when he was fighting Ji Tianqing? At this moment, the God King's clone is already very weak? With this thought in mind, Yun Shuoyan's heart, which had just relaxed, could not help but tense up again. She had to be on guard. If the God King's clone was defeated, she would have to quickly leave planet Heaven Trader. At the same time, Yunyao, Jiku, and the others had the same thoughts as Yun Shuoyan. Everyone's tense expressions relaxed a little. White Dragon pointed his sword at the God King's clone and mocked contemptuously. What bullsh *T God King? Is this all you've got? Just now you acted like you were the boss of the world, but in the end you're just an idiot? The God King's clone was enraged. He was the supreme God King who ruled over thousands of gods. When had he ever been scolded by an ant? This was absolutely intolerable. This emperor has underestimated you ants. But do you think that you have the right to fight me? Naive. The God King's clone shouted coldly. He stopped underestimating them and used his full strength. Sky collapsing fist. The God King's clone suddenly extended his left palm and blasted out a golden fist shadow that was as large as a mountain. The fist shadow descended from the sky, carrying with it endless divine might as it enveloped the glazed fire dragon. Before the fist shadow arrived, it was suppressed by the supreme divine might. The space around it froze, making it unable to dodge. Without a doubt, the God King's clone had changed his strategy. He was going to kill everyone one by one. The first target to be killed was the inconspicuous glazed fire dragon. At this critical moment, the glazed fire dragon could only resist with all its might. Yunyao, Jiku, and the others also saw through the God King's clone's intention. They let out a cry of surprise and combined their powers to resist. Suddenly, countless sword shadows lit up and slashed toward the sky collapsing fist shadow. Bam! 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 Following a series of deafening explosions, the divine spells that everyone used were all destroyed. Fragments of divine light burst out and covered the sky. This time the God King's clone used his strongest power and used a killer move. Its power had indeed increased by 3 times. Bam! There was a loud, muffled explosion. The sky-collapsing fist shadow struck the glazed fire dragon. It immediately let out a miserable cry. The mountain-like golden dragon body was smashed into pieces by the sky-collapsing fist shadow. Billions of pieces of flesh and blood splattered and scattered between heaven and earth. Not only was the glazed fire dragon's physical body destroyed, but its dragon soul was also instantly killed by the punch. It died on the spot. Chapter 2750. Yunyao Jiku and the others had witnessed the glazed fire dragon being killed with a single punch. The shock and anger in their hearts erupted like a volcano. No one had expected the godly king's clone to have such terrifying divine might when he went all out. He's still the divine king's clone after all. Jiku was filled with grief and anger as he looked at the glazed fire dragon's body parts scattered all over the place. That short sentence contained too much helplessness and pessimism. The most sorrowful person was Yunyao. The glazed fire dragon had been with her for countless years, accompanying her in her cultivation. She had long developed feelings for it. But now the glazed fire dragon had been killed by the divine king's clone right under her nose. Filled with anger, she really wanted to kill the divine king's clone with her sword. But reason calmed her down. Although the divine king's clone has weakened a little, he can still kill us one by one. Even if we attack him as a group and exhaust his divine power, we will all be dead by then. We can't be entangled with him anymore. Let's leave this place first, Fine Tianqing, and come up with a countermeasure. Yunyao used her divine consciousness to convey her thoughts to everyone. Jiku and the white dragon smiled bitterly and shook their heads. Escape? Can we escape? The divine king's clone is 100 times faster than us. There's no way we can escape. Just as everyone was discussing telepathically, the divine king's clone attacked again. This time his target was the black dragon. I hate the reptiles of the dragon clan the most. The divine king's clone had a cold look in his eyes as he shouted coldly, "Sky-splitting palm." He stretched out his palms again and unleashed his strongest power, creating 2 golden palm shadows that were thousands of miles long. The dazzling golden sky-splitting palm shadows struck down with unparalleled divine power, locking onto the black dragon's aura. The space within thousands of miles around it was also frozen by an invisible force. At this critical moment, the black dragon used his ultimate skill without hesitation and coiled his body together. Black Tortoise Dragon Coil. This was the black tortoise's ultimate defensive skill that Ji Tianqing had taught him. The black dragon's 100-kilometer-long body coiled up, emitting a boundless black light that protected its head. Yunyao, Jiku, Bai Long, and the others immediately used their ultimate techniques to block the 2 palms. However, it was all in vain. Boom boom. Boom! Amidst a series of explosions, everyone's divine spells were all destroyed by the sky-splitting palm. The power of the 2 palm shadows did not diminish as they struck the black dragon. PFFF. The hundreds of kilometers of black light enveloping the black dragon was instantly shattered by the heaven-splitting palm. Its all-out defense couldn't even withstand a single blow. Immediately afterward, 2 heaven-splitting palm shadows struck it. Boom! With a muffled sound, the black dragon's body was shattered by the sky-splitting palm. It was broken into a dozen pieces and fell from the sky. The huge dragon head was also smashed into pieces by the giant palm. Dragon blood and brain matter splattered all over the sky. Not only was the dragon's body destroyed, but the dragon's soul was also shattered by the heaven-splitting palm. The black dragon didn't even have time to scream before it died. More than a dozen pieces of the dragon's body and the smashed dragon's head fell into the ruins below, mixed with dragon blood. The glazed fire dragon and the black dragon were killed one after another. Everyone's defense was useless. Even Yunyao, Jiku, and the others took the opportunity to attack the divine king's avatar. However, it was to no avail. The 10,000-kilometer-tall golden avatar didn't have any wounds or holes. The only change was that the light around his body dimmed even more, and his body became thinner. Everyone knew that the divine king's avatar's power was weakening. However, they didn't dare to take the risk and couldn't continue fighting. They believed that before the divine king's avatar's power dissipated, he could kill them all. Yunyao immediately gave the order. Run! Where there's life, there's hope. The divine king's avatar couldn't descend every day. and he wouldn't stay on planet Heaven forever. As long as they could escape today's calamity, they would have plenty of opportunities to deal with the Heaven Punishers in the future. Swoosh! Yunniao, Jiku, and the others took Qian Yu and Lan Kuan and ran away without hesitation. Everyone used their teleportation divine abilities and teleported 5 times in the blink of an eye, escaping 5,000 miles away. The Divine King's avatar chased after them at a moderate pace. He sneered disdainfully and said, "You still want to run away? Even Ji Tianxing couldn't escape from me. You're too naive." As he spoke, he crossed 10,000 miles in one step and stood in front of Yunniao, Jiku, and the others. When everyone heard what he said, they were instantly worried and furious. "Bastard! What did you do to Tianxing? Bastard! Where's Big Brother Tianxing?" The Divine King's avatar looked down at everyone and sneered mockingly. "Where else can he be? He's been waiting for you at the underworld. Since you love each other so much, I'll send you on your way. You'll have company on your way to the underworld." As he spoke, he used his ultimate divine ability again and attacked Qian Yu. Sky-shattering finger. The Divine King's avatar stretched out his right hand and pointed at Qian Yu with his index and middle fingers. Suddenly, a 1,000-mile-long golden finger descended from the sky and pierced toward Qian Yu. Heaven and earth within 10,000 miles froze. Qian Yu's divine soul was also suppressed and his aura was locked. There was nowhere for him to run. Yunniao, Bailong, Ji Wuhan, Ji Wushuang, and Lan Kuan all used their ultimate techniques to block the sky-shattering finger descending from the sky. However, everyone's divine abilities and secret techniques were once again crushed by the sky-shattering finger. Bam! Following an earth-shattering explosion, Qian Yu's mountain-like body was also crushed by the sky-shattering finger. Thousands of pieces of ice-blue flesh and blood fell from the sky. With just one move, Qian Yu's physical body and divine soul collapsed at the same time. Not only that, Bailong, Ji Wuhan, and Ji Wushuang were also sent flying by the violent shockwave. When everyone tried to block it, Jika didn't do anything. She already knew the outcome. No one could block it and Qian Yu's body would also explode. Therefore, she could only suppress her endless grief and anger and secretly use the divine ability secret manual. Swish! Divine flames burst out of her body and she was as dazzling as the sun. For different colored divine flames formed a projection of a divine pagoda that was thousands of feet tall and enveloped her body. At this moment, she was already connected to the Jiuqian Tenju Tower, a few 100 million miles away. She was equivalent to a portal. As long as everyone entered the tower, they would be able to return to the tower in the 5 Elements world a few 100 million miles away. Quick! Let's go! Jiku stood in the sky and shouted with her immortal will, telling everyone to run away first. However, Yunniao, Bailong, Lan Kuan and the 2 children were a few thousand miles away from her. Everyone came back to their senses and immediately teleported towards her. Unfortunately, the Divine King's avatar had been watching Jiku for a long time and saw something strange about her. "You're just an ant. How can you do that?" However, it's all in vain. The Divine King's avatar sneered in disdain and suddenly stretched out his arms as if he wanted to hug the sky. Apparently, he used that ultimate divine power again. Sky freezing explode. Chapter 2751. It consumed too much divine power to use this divine power. The godly king's avatar's body became even dimmer and thinner. However, the power of this divine power was incomparably terrifying. A mysterious and vast divine power instantly enveloped a radius of tens of thousands of miles. This area was frozen by an invisible divine power. Not only did space freeze, but even the flow of time slowed down by 100 times. Yunniao, Bailong, and the others ran toward Jiku with all their might, but their speed was slowed down countless times. At the same time, under the precise control of the godly king's avatar, the space in this area exploded. Boom! Crack! An earth-shattering sound rang out. The world within a radius of tens of thousands of miles became fragmented, like a smashed mirror. Yun Shuyan and Tianshu, who were hiding tens of thousands of miles away, were fine. Lan Kuan and Ji Wuhan, who were desperately teleporting, were also fine. But Ji Wushuang's body directly collapsed, turning into several hundred pieces of debris. Bailong was also shattered into countless pieces of flesh and blood. Yunyao's outcome was slightly better. Dense cracks appeared all over her body, but her divine body did not shatter. Dazzling rainbow divine light surged out of her body, protecting her body and divine soul. The one who suffered the most was, of course, Jiku. She was the target of the godly king's avatar. Not only did the source stone armor she wore crack, but her divine body also shattered into thousands of pieces. The divine pagoda formed by the 4 divine flames naturally dissipated. However, she was not dead yet. Her divine soul was still intact. She endured the pain of being cut into pieces and used her divine soul to control thousands of pieces of flesh and bones to gather together. However, the godly king's avatar did not give her a chance to recover her divine body. Boom! A mountain-sized golden fist descended from the sky and blasted Jiku into smithereens. Not only did thousands of pieces of flesh and blood dissipate, but even her divine soul was shattered. However, a strange scene occurred. The pieces of flesh and soul that were falling from the sky were actually ignited with dazzling golden divine flames. Nirvana divine flames. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the Nirvana divine flame burned everything and disappeared from the sky. In this way, only Yunyao, Ji Wuhan Lan Kuan, and the shattered white dragon remained in the sky. The white dragon was incomparably stubborn. Hundreds of pieces of flesh blossomed with white light and quickly gathered together in an attempt to restore its divine body. However, the God King's clone didn't give him the chance. Boom! A gigantic blood-red palm that blotted out the sky slammed down. Immediately, the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The sun and moon lost their light. White Dragon's divine soul shattered on the spot, and his physical body turned into fine powder that filled the sky, falling into the ruins. Thus, the White Dragon also died. The God King's clone's gaze landed on Yunyao, seeing her body emitting a 7-colored brilliance, as if there was a special power protecting her. A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. However, he didn't think too deeply about it. He waved his hand and grabbed at Ji Wuhan and Lan Kuan. Lan Kuan saw Bai Long being killed with his own eyes. He was filled with grief and indignation. His eyes turned red. Without waiting for the God King's clone's gigantic palm to grab him, he resolutely self-destructed. He was honest and straightforward by nature. After interacting with everyone for so many years, he had already planted a deep friendship. Now that the White Dragon was dead, and everyone was dead, he didn't want to live alone. Boom! A ball of dazzling blue light suddenly exploded high in the sky, like a huge mushroom cloud, rising into the sky. In that instant, the area within a radius of 50,000 miles became an icy blue world. The God King's clone also didn't expect that the seemingly honest Lan Kuan was actually so unyielding. He was the closest to Lan Kuan, so he bore the brunt of the most violent power. Boom! Under the icy blue shock wave, he was actually blasted hundreds of miles away, his body swaying. Although he wasn't injured and he didn't look like he was in a sorry state. However, his figure became even fainter, close to being transparent. When the shock wave of Lan Kuan's self-destruction swept across a radius of 50,000 miles, there were other people who suffered as well. Ji Wuhan was already injured, and after being hit by the shock wave, he fainted on the spot, his body covered in cracks. Like broken porcelain, he would shatter at the slightest touch. Yunyao's body was already covered in cracks. It was only because she was protected by the 7-colored divine light that she didn't collapse on the spot. After being swept by the shock wave, her body couldn't be maintained and immediately turned into thousands of pieces, scattering between heaven and earth. Even her divine soul was severely injured, and she fell into a coma. Yun Shuoyan, who was thousands of miles away, didn't have time to escape either. She was drowned by the shock wave of Lan Kuan's self-destruction. Boom! She was blasted away, tumbling and falling thousands of miles away. Puffed, when she stopped in the sky, blood spurted out of her 7 orifices, and cracks appeared all over her body, turning into icy blue blood lines. Her body was also about to collapse and her strength was extremely weak. Even Tianshu, who was protected in her arms, was severely injured in his coma. Tianshu was originally a pile of meat paste, and now it was directly turned into a pile of meat paste, miserable to the extreme. His divine soul was also severely injured, and he fell into a deep hibernation. Only a weak trace of divine soul aura remained, proving that he was still alive. After a long time, when the overwhelming icy blue shock wave spread to 500,000 miles, it gradually dissipated. This area was completely destroyed into ruins and chaos reigned. The extremely tragic battle of the gods had ended just like that. The Heaven Destroyer star was saved. Ji Tianqing and his companions had all died tragically. Only Ji Wuhan was still alive, but he had fallen into the hands of the God King's clone. The Divine King's clone stood in the primal chaos sky in a daze as he looked around. Other than him and the unconscious Ji Wuhan, there was no one else. He lowered his head to look at his almost transparent body and couldn't help but frown. Damn it! I only have 30% of my divine power left. He frowned and thought for a moment, then turned his head to look at Yun Xuan in the distance. Then he carried the unconscious Ji Wuhan in his hand and flew toward Yun Xuan. Swoosh! After a few steps, the God King's clone landed in front of Yun Xuan and looked down at her indifferently. Even though the Heaven Destroyer race had won the final victory, Yun Xuan was not happy. She wasn't happy at all. Her injuries were too severe, so much so that they threatened her foundation of the divine path. She might not be able to break through to the God King realm in the future. Her most valued son, Tianshu, was also in a state of uncertain survival. She was very anxious and sorrowful. Only when the God King's clone arrived did she see a life-saving straw. She hurriedly endured her injuries and knelt down. "Greetings, Your Majesty. I beg Your Majesty to save my son." As she kowtowed, Yun Xuan begged with a heart full of grief. The God King's clone looked at her expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, "Tianshu is my last disciple, so I will naturally save him. Moreover, he is already injured to such an extent that it is unsuitable for him to remain in the mortal realm. However, I will be taking him back to the God realm, which is an act of defiance against the will of the heavens. You will have to pay the price." Yun Xuan ignored the last sentence. When she heard that Tianshu could still be saved and would be brought back to the God realm by the God King's clone, she revealed a relieved expression and hurriedly kowtowed in thanks. "Yun Xuan will never forget Your Majesty's grace of rebirth." The God King's clone shook his head expressionlessly. "There's no need to never forget. You just need to make a contribution." Chapter 2752. Yun Xuan was stunned. She subconsciously raised her head and looked at the godly king's clone in confusion. "Your Majesty, how can I contribute?" At this moment many thoughts flashed through her mind. Could it be that Your Majesty wants me? No. No matter how beautiful I am, I'm covered in blood, and I'm severely injured furthermore. His Majesty is not a vulgar person. Most importantly, this is only his clone, not his true body. The godly king's clone saw her constantly changing expression and guessed that she was imagining things. However, he did not expose her. Instead, he pointed to the sky. "I forcefully opened the passage between the two worlds and have been suppressed by the heavenly Tao. My strength has weakened. Now that the passage is healing, I need your help if my clone wants to bring them back. You should know the divine realm's blood-burning technique, right?" Upon hearing this, Yun Xuan roughly understood what he meant. Her expression changed. Her eyes flashed with indignation, but she could not show it. She could only lower her head. She fell silent. She was struggling and hesitating. The godly king's clone did not say anything else. He waved his hand and shot out a golden light. He collected Dubhe, who had been reduced to meat paste, and held it in his right hand. "Follow me." Then he brought Yun Xuan away from Planet Heaven Trader and into the void. About 15 minutes later, the two flew into the void and stood tens of thousands of miles below the passage between the two worlds. It had been 12 hours since the passage had appeared. The passage that was tens of thousands of miles long had shrunk by more than half. It was only 1,500 miles long. Furthermore, the golden divine light and lightning in the passage had dimmed significantly. In 6 hours at most, the passage between the two worlds would heal. It would be repaired by the heavenly Tao. Yun Xuan immediately understood. Even the most powerful godly king could only interfere with the heavenly Tao's power. They could not truly contend against it. Just as she was in a daze, the godly king's clone spoke. "What are you waiting for?" His voice was cold and emotionless. Yun Shuyan's body stiffened. She hesitated for a moment before making up her mind. She looked up and asked, "Your Majesty, I was once a divine lord of the upper realm. In this life I mastered the coiling dragon 4 seas, and have a chance of breaking through to the godly king realm. In comparison, my talent and future are much brighter than Dubhe's. I hope that Your Majesty the Divine King will understand. I am willing to serve you like a dog or horse. Even if I am a slave or a maid, I am willing to do so." Clearly, Yun Shuyan did not wish to die. She had died a horrible death in her previous life. In this life she was full of ambition. Not only did she want to return to the God realm for revenge, she also wanted to break through to the God King realm. In order to survive, in order to step onto the peak of the divine path, she would rather sacrifice her son Tianshu. This was the ultimate egoist. The God King's clone naturally understood her intentions. In fact, even before she spoke and hesitated, the God King's avatar had already guessed what she was thinking. However, the God King's clone expressionlessly shook his head and refused. "I can understand your feelings, but unfortunately, I can only return smoothly if you ignite your blood and transform into a deity. Furthermore, Dubhe is your son. He has inherited all of your talents in your coiling dragon 4 seas. Under this emperor's nurturing, his future achievements are limitless. Most importantly, he is not wise enough, which is why he is absolutely loyal to me. As for a beautiful, scheming, and ambitious woman like you, I don't like that at all." This was the longest sentence the God King's clone had spoken since he had descended into the mortal realm. There was no other way. He only had 30% of his divine power left. If he were at his peak, he would not have wasted his breath on Yun Shuyan. Yun Shuyan fell silent. Her blood-stained face revealed a bitter cold smile. "So, in the end, birth is still the most important thing? For a lowly person like me, no matter how much effort I put in, I will still end up paving the way for someone else, right?" Yun Shuyan's voice was filled with tears of blood. Her eyes were lifeless, filled with despair and indignation. The God King's clone was expressionless as he said indifferently, "Wrong. The most important thing is luck. It is fate." Yun Shuyan laughed like a madwoman. Tears of blood flowed from her eyes as she looked up into the sky and roared, "F***ck your fate. I refuse to accept this." As she roared, she looked like she had gone mad. However, she had no other choice. She could only use the burning blood divine transformation technique. Her entire body ignited with bloody flames that soared into the sky. This divine ability was very common in the God realm, but it was also a forbidden divine ability. This was because its nature was very similar to self-destruction, sacrificing everything one had, including one's life, soul, and everything one had learned in one's life, transformed into the most powerful force. Only those who were destined to die would use this divine ability to fulfill their wishes or goals. Whoosh! The bloody flames that surged into the sky burned more and more fiercely. In just a few short breaths, Yun Shuyan's flesh and soul disappeared. She turned into a bloody flame that soared into the sky and flew through the void towards the passage between the two worlds. When the bloody flames rushed into the passage, a loud, dull sound immediately rang out from within. Rumble! As the rumbling of thunder rang out, golden divine light and lightning shone brightly, bursting forth with even more power. Immediately, the passage between the two worlds stopped shrinking and gradually expanded outwards. When the passage expanded to 5,000 miles, it gradually stabilized. The God King clone looked up and muttered to himself, "Although this power is very weak, it's enough." Then he carried the unconscious Ji Wuhan in his left hand, and the sky pivot wrapped in golden light in his right hand as he flew towards the passage between the two worlds. As he flew through the void, his body shrank as well. The God King clone was about to return to the God realm. However, when he was still 15,000 miles away from the passage between the two worlds, a change occurred in the void behind him. Kaboom! An earth-shaking sound that sounded like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens suddenly exploded in the void. Following the loud sound, a 4,000-mile-long and 4,000-mile-wide gap actually collapsed in the cold, pitch-black void. Resplendent golden light, white light, purple lightning, scarlet flames, and icy blue divine light lit up in the huge gap. 5 colored divine light and lightning bolts firmly supported the gap. Another passage between the two worlds appeared. When the God King clone heard the loud sound, his expression immediately changed, and he subconsciously looked back. He saw two sky-blotting dark golden dragon claws extend from the passage between the two worlds and strike the God King clone with supreme divine might. That's right. The God King clone didn't appear in the newly appeared passage between the two worlds, only the sky-blotting dark golden dragon claws. The God King clone's expression changed drastically at the sight of this. His eyes revealed unparalleled fury and shock. "It's you!" The God King clone roared in fury, shaking the void for tens of thousands of miles. However, no one answered from the passage between the two worlds, nor did any god appear. Only the two dark golden dragon claws slammed into the God King's avatar with the fastest speed and the most violent power. Chapter 2753. Bam! An earth-shattering sound erupted, shaking the void for millions of miles. The first dark golden dragon claw slammed into the God King clone. Under the incomparably violent power, the God King's clone was sent flying back, tumbling 100,000 miles away. But at this moment, the second dark golden dragon claw slammed in front of him. Strangely, this dragon claw suddenly changed direction and slashed at the God King clone's left arm like a giant blade. Crack! With a crisp sound, the God King clone's left arm broke on the spot, turning into golden light and dissipating. The unconscious Ji Wuhan, who was being carried by the God King clone's left arm, instantly fell into the void. With a flip of his dark golden dragon claw, he grabbed Ji Wuhan in his palm. Then, with a flash of golden light, the dragon claw retracted into the passage and disappeared. Even the passageway between the two worlds was rapidly closing. In the blink of an eye, the five-colored light and lightning disappeared, the passage disappeared, and the void regained its calm. "Ah! You damned bastard! You're despicable to the extreme." The God King clone, whose left arm had been cut off, flew for 90,000 miles before stopping. He couldn't feel any pain, but he was infuriated by endless anger and humiliation. What infuriated him the most was that the dragon claw immediately retracted after snatching Ji Wuhan, not giving him a chance to fight back at all. "Bastard! Despicable bastard! This emperor will definitely go find you. I'll skin you alive, pull out your tendons and scatter your soul." The God King clone stood in the void and roared furiously, venting his endless anger. He originally wanted to spare Ji Wuhan's life and personally direct a good show. But he didn't expect that someone else would intercept him just as he was about to return to the God realm. This was a great humiliation. However, the God King clone quickly calmed down and calmed his anger. The passage above his head started to shrink again. Clearly, Yun Shuyan's blood ignition divinity transformation power was too weak and could only hold on for a moment. The God King clone didn't waste any more time. Holding the sky pivot wrapped in golden light, he jumped into the passage. Swoosh! The wretched and weak God King clone disappeared. Not long after, the passageway between the two worlds closed. The void returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Only the messy Heaven FA star floated quietly in the void. Tens of millions of miles away from it was a huge invisible gravitational field, and a black hole with a circumference of 100 million miles. On the other side, in the void a billion miles away from the Heaven Punisher star, the Five Elements world was also floating quietly without any ripples. The Five Elements world was still peaceful. The tens of billions of martial artists and common people on the 5 continents had no idea what was going on. He was still living his life the way he used to. Only by being in the void could one see the changes in the Five Elements world clearly. It was very strange and inconceivable. The golden light barrier that enveloped the Five Elements world was 800 million miles wide. However, at this moment such a huge golden light barrier was actually collapsing and rapidly dissipating. Since ancient times, this golden light barrier had protected the Five Elements world for more than 30,000 years. But now, it was dissipating at a speed visible to the naked eye. No one saw that there was a special pattern to the disappearance of the golden light barrier. They disappeared from all directions and gradually converged towards the center. At the center of the golden light barrier, there was a ball of condensed golden light that was gradually shrinking. This ball of golden light had a circumference of 10,000 miles, but it was constantly shrinking as if it was condensing into a pearl. Deep in the ruins of God, in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower, at the highest point of the tower on the 9th floor. This was a special space with a circumference of about 10,000 feet. There was eternal darkness in all directions, but in the middle was a dazzling golden sea of fire. This was the divine power of the phoenix, the nirvana divine flame. The surging golden sea of fire was wrapped in eternal darkness like a fireball with a circumference of 10,000 feet. Ever since Jiku had refined the tower, she could only enter the first 7 floors. It was on the 7th floor that she had practiced the divine power of the ancient demon god, and cultivated 5 types of divine flames. However, the 8th and 9th floors were still forbidden, and she could not enter or leave. This also led to her not knowing what secrets were hidden in the last 2 floors of the tower. However, at this moment, in the fireball formed by the nirvana divine flame on the 9th floor, there was a slender figure of a woman who was 7 feet tall sleeping quietly in the golden sea of fire. She had long fiery red hair, and her face and figure were extremely beautiful. Her temperament was also elegant and noble, like a goddess from the 9 heavens. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she was sleeping quietly in the golden sea of fire. If Ji Tianxing, Yu Niao, and the others were here, they would definitely recognize her at a glance. She was Jiku. Of course, she was still an illusion and not a physical body. However, as time passed, this illusion became more and more real and subtle. 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, after about half a month, the illusion condensed to the extreme and started to grow flesh. In the nirvana divine flame, a new life began. At the same time, in the depths of the 5 elements world's core, the core of the world, which was wrapped in endless lava, was still a golden ball of light with a circumference of 10,000 miles. Outside the ball of light was endless crimson lava, boiling and surging, forming countless gorgeous and magnificent images. And inside the golden ball of light was eternal silence. The air was filled with golden divine light, and strands of it were like clouds. In the middle of the ball of light was still the golden mountain that was thousands of feet tall. 10,000 meridians extended from the foot of the mountain, covering 100,000 miles of space. And on the golden mountain peak, there was an 8-foot-long handsome figure lying there. Even though it was just an illusion, it was extremely lifelike and detailed. He had a head full of black hair, a handsome face and sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. A snow-white robe wrapped around his body, adding a bit of mystery to his aura. Without a doubt, he was Ji Tianxing. After he was killed by the Divine King's clone, the heaven-mending pearl turned into a white light and escaped. His phantom image appeared here. After all, he had already refined the 5 elements world and merged with it. If the 5 elements world was not destroyed, how could he die? Now half a month had already passed. Ji Tianxing's illusion was sleeping here. His figure had already become extremely solid and was growing flesh. In the depths of his mind, there was still a walnut-sized ball of light flickering with a faint white light. That was the heaven-mending pearl. Apart from that, there was also a pitch-black thin needle in the ball of light. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that it was not a needle, but a divine sword. It was the burial of heaven's sword that had shrunk countless times. However, the blade was full of cracks, and it had obviously suffered heavy damage. As time passed, a month quickly passed. The burial of heaven's sword hidden in the heaven-mending pearl was the first to recover its vitality. Swoosh! The burial of heaven's sword flew out and floated in the air, quickly returning to its normal size. And at this time, Ji Tianxing's body of flesh and blood had also completed its rebirth. Other than the fact that he was still unconscious, everything else was exactly the same as before. End of chapter. Chapter 2754. In his days, Ji Tianxing felt as if he was in a dream. He had lost his body, leaving only his invisible soul floating above the myriad worlds. It might have been tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years. During such a long period of time, his soul had always been at the top of the heavens, looking down at the trichiliocosm and the endless void. He watched with his own eyes as one barren and weak star after another gradually grew stronger. Then, those stars gathered the 5 elements and received the protection of the divine light from the heavenly Tao. Then those stars went from being barren and withered to being reborn, and countless living beings emerged. Thousands of living beings continued to grow stronger, creating their own civilizations, building one kingdom after another, blooming with brilliant light. However, as time passed, those worlds that were once prosperous to the extreme died one after another. The billions of living beings on the stars continued to wither, finally returning to coldness and loneliness. As for those enormous stars, they began to shatter one after another and fall apart. Either they turned into star fragments, becoming shooting stars that cut through the void, leaving behind their final brilliance. Or they turned into broken, desolate, and dead stars waiting to be destroyed. Or the next generation of new life. Just like that, Ji Tianqing watched from the top of the heavens for hundreds of thousands of years. He watched the stars flicker and extinguish, the rise and fall of the myriad races in the world. He watched things turn in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. He watched the cycle of prosperity and decline. He saw through the vicissitudes of time and all the vanity. During this period, no matter how the endless stars in the void changed, there were only 3,000 stars that were enveloped by the divine light of the heavenly Tao, and had wisdom, life, and civilization. Not one more, not one less. When the long period of time was about to end, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but raise his head to take a look, because he knew that this dream was about to end. And before the dream ended, he really wanted to know what was above the trichiliocosm and the boundless starry sky. Then he saw that there seemed to be an invisible barrier above his head. It was like a transparent crystal, but also like a frozen water surface. On the ice surface further away, or rather above the sky, there were 3 huge suns floating. They formed horns on each other and stood in a tripartite balance. 2 of them shone with golden light, even more dazzling than the sun. As for the other one, it was hazy with 7 colors, making it seem both real and illusory. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and he couldn't help but wonder. 3? Why are there 3 of them? How could there be 3 of them? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he left the dream and finally woke up. Phew, Ji Tianqing let out a long breath, as if he had just woken up from a million years of slumber, and opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was the divine golden light that floated in the sky like strands of silk. Even higher up in the sky, there was a golden barrier that covered the sky. It was like a ball of light that covered a radius of 100,000 miles. Outside the golden ball of light, there was an endless amount of red magma that surged violently. Seeing this familiar scene, Ji Tianqing felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders, and a smile appeared on his face. My guess was right. I ended up back here. He could already tell that this was the inner part of the 5 elements world, the core of the world deep in the Earth's core. That was right. When he fought with the God King's avatar, he was certain that he would lose. What kind of joke was this? He did not even reach the celestial deity realm. What right did he have to defeat the God King's avatar? Even if that was just a God King's avatar. His strength weakened to the extreme after descending into the mortal world. But 1% of a peak God King's strength was also comparable to a Divine Lord powerhouse. A Divine Lord was absolutely invincible in the mortal world. Therefore, Ji Tianqing was bound to lose. Furthermore, he would be beaten to death by the God King's avatar. But he was not afraid, nor was he worried. He still fought with the God King's avatar for several hours. Why? Because he had the greatest reliance, which was the 5 elements world. He had long merged into one with the 5 elements world. As long as the 5 elements world was not destroyed, he would never die. Moreover, he still had the Heaven Mending Pearl, this divine artifact. Even if the Heaven Mending Pearl's power recovered was less than 10% of a king-level divine artifact. But for that God King's avatar to want to blast the Heaven Mending Pearl and annihilate his divine soul, it was also absolutely impossible. As long as his divine soul was not destroyed, he would not die. This way, Ji Tianqing's life had 2 guarantees. What was there to fear? Now he woke up inside the world's core, which verified this point. Ji Tianqing straightened his waist and sat up. Reaching out his left hand, he grasped the sword of burial of heaven in his hand. Without needing to use his eyes to see, his divine sense immediately sensed that the sword of burial of heaven also recovered to its original state. He lowered his head and looked at his body, sizing up a few glances around. His body completely recovered, no different from before. The only difference was that he was currently a half-step celestial deity realm. Unlike before, it was 99 times of a peak true god, strengthened to the limit. The difference between the two was that he was ascending to the divine world now. In just a few breaths of time, Ji Tianqing guessed the reason. As it turned out, his guess was correct. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and the others must have gone to planet raiding and met the deity king's avatar. Ji Tianqing suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. He was extremely anxious. If Yao Yao is resurrected here, then what about Ku? What about our children? What about the white dragon and the 4 divine beasts? He murmured with a cold face. He hurriedly controlled the power of the world to search in the 5 elements world. He had to find the others, especially Ku and the 2 children. Whether he went to heaven or hell, he had to find them. However, things did not go as he wished. After an entire day, Ji Tianqing searched all over the 5 elements world and searched all the places where the others might appear. However, he still could not find a single one. Planet raiding. There's still planet raiding. In his despair, a thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind as he thought of the Star of Heaven punishment. That was his last hope. He flew through the void without hesitation and went straight to planet raiding. In order to reach there as quickly as possible, he did not hesitate to consume the remaining power of the world in his body and raised his speed to the limit. 10 days later, Ji Tianqing appeared on planet raiding. After the successive disasters, planet raiding was already in a terrible state. 3 of the 5 continents were destroyed, and the last 2 continents were also in chaos. Of the initial 30 billion people, only about 10 billion were left. More than 80% of the martial gods had died in the war. Only a small number of soldiers and experts had escaped from planet raiding and rushed to planet celestial chaos. Now, planet raiding was truly without a leader. The 10 billion people on the 2 continents had been in chaos and fear. Killings occurred everywhere. The people's hearts were in turmoil, and the war was in full swing. The news of the destruction of the Arch Palace and the death of the Thearcha's son and the Empress had already spread throughout planet raiding. The surviving people all knew that planet raiding was finished. The more powerful leaders and experts all wanted to escape from planet raiding as soon as possible. However, without enough forces, resources, and battleships, they could not leave at all. As a result, hundreds of great forces broke out into a great battle royale and slaughtered one another. In order to escape from planet raiding and go to their new home, and in order to survive, they did not care about the friendship of their own race and raised their weapons against their own race. Human nature was evil. For survival benefits and status, they would be keen on internal strife. No matter in time and space, in any world for any race, this was the universal truth. After Ji Tianqing arrived at planet raiding, he used the power of the world to check the situation of the 2 continents. In just a few hours, he saw the situation of planet raiding. At the same time, he also received the most important news. The Arch Palace has been destroyed? Tianshu and Yun Shuyan are both dead? Ji Tianqing immediately realized that this matter must have something to do with Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. Therefore, he controlled the power of the world and went to the old site of the Arch Palace. There used to be an endless sea of clouds thousands of miles high in the sky. Now there were thousands of holes and gaps in the sea of clouds hundreds of thousands of miles wide. Even though 2 months had passed since the war, those holes and gaps had not disappeared. Even the sea within a radius of 300,000 miles under the sky had become a dried-up land that looked like ruins. Countless powerful divine powers were still left in the ruins. The mixed divine power was like a transparent wall that filled the ruins and blocked off the endless seawater around them. In about a year or 2, those mixed divine powers would dissipate. At that time, the seawater in all directions would no longer be obstructed and would drown the ruins. When the sea returned to normal, the traces of the war would also be covered. Ji Tianqing stood in the sea of clouds with his eyes closed. He was releasing his divine sense to cover the surrounding 100,000 miles and carefully investigate. At the same time, he also used the power of the world to protect the ruins. This was because as soon as he arrived, he detected the most familiar auras. First of all, the divine power of the Divine King's clone was the most violent and overbearing. Secondly, there were the auras of Yunyao and Jiku, as well as the auras of Bailong, Ji Wushuang, and the three divine beasts. The facts proved that they had indeed been to the Arch Palace and had fought here for a long time. The aura of the Divine King's clone was the strongest, which proved that he had fought here and released a powerful divine power. By the time Ji Tianqing found these clues, the answer was already obvious. He immediately guessed that they had most likely died here. Chapter 2756. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky and formed a divine art with both hands. Light shadows appeared in front of him. He was using a divine power secret art. Time reversal divine ability. Although this divine power couldn't turn back time, it could use the situation of this world and the chaotic divine power to recreate the original scene. Swoosh! When Ji Tianqing formed the 68th seal, the white light in front of him suddenly condensed. A white light with a radius of 100 feet appeared in front of him like a light screen. Then the huge light screen showed the blue sea, the blue sky, and the white clouds, showing many fragmented images. As Ji Tianqing cast the art, the fragmented images kept changing. The scene in the image was going against the flow, moving back to 2 months ago. After a while, the images on the light screen moved to 2 months ago. Hundreds of fragmented images immediately appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. He clearly saw that the Arch Palace hadn't been destroyed yet. Thousands of battleships were gathered at the gate, and there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers and guards in the Arch Palace. Many battleships were loading soldiers and leaving the Arch Palace. However, Yunyao, Jiku, and the others led the 4 divine beasts into the Arch Palace quietly. A fierce battle broke out. Yunyao, Jiku, and the others had won a complete victory. They had killed all the soldiers of the heaven-punishing army and destroyed thousands of battleships. Not long after, Tianshu and Yun Shuoyan appeared one after another. Yunyao, Jiku, and the others surrounded Tianshu and Yun Shuoyan and severely injured them. The entire Arch Palace was also destroyed, turning into a desolate ruin. But at this moment the avatar of the Divine King, who was thousands of miles tall, rushed over from the distant sky. His strength was unparalleled, and he easily blocked everyone's joint attack. Then he seemed to be angered. He killed the glazed fire dragon with a punch and blasted it into powder. Then he killed the black dragon with a palm strike and blasted it into pieces. Then he killed Qianyu with a finger strike and blasted it into pieces. Then the Divine King's avatar used his ultimate divine power, space freezing explosion. Immediately Yunyao, Jiku, Ji Wushuang, and Bailong's bodies collapsed and were torn into pieces. They were turned into hundreds of pieces and killed by the Divine King's avatar one by one. All of them had died. When he saw these scenes, Ji Tianqing was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His eyes turned blood red. He didn't go crazy, nor did he roar. Suppressing the boundless hatred and endless killing intent in his chest, he muttered to himself in a low and hoarse voice, "No matter who you are, even if I have to kill everyone in the God realm, I will tear you to pieces." No matter who the Divine King was. Out of instinct, Ji Tianqing wanted to go to the void and use the time reversal ability to see what was going on. However, he could only suppress this thought and do something more important first. Resurrect Jiku, Ji Wushuang, Bailong, and the 4 divine beasts. That's right. Resurrect everyone who had died. He had the heaven-mending pearl, and there were still a few thousand life-saving divine lights left in it. They had the heaven-defying effect of resurrecting the dead. After Jiku, Ji Wushuang, and the others were killed, their corpses, flesh, and divine soul fragments were scattered in the ruins. This was where the Divine Emperor Palace was located, and it had always been a forbidden area for the Heaven Punishers. Ever since the end of the war, no one dared to come here. After all, the billions of Heaven Punishers on the 2 continents had long fallen into chaos and war. How could they care about anything else? This gave Ji Tianqing hope of resurrecting everyone. As long as he could find everyone's corpses and divine soul fragments, he could use the life-saving divine lights to resurrect them. Ji Tianqing didn't waste any time and hurriedly searched the ruins. The reason why this area was filled with everyone's aura and hadn't dissipated after 2 months was because everyone's corpses were still here. Jiku, Ji Wushuang, and the others were all peak true god experts. Even if they were killed, their corpses shattered, and their divine souls shattered, they wouldn't dissipate even after 100 years. Ji Tianqing searched the ruins carefully and quickly found a large amount of flesh, bones, and divine soul fragments. There were his daughter Ji Wushuang, his disciple Bai Long, Qianyu, and Black Dragon. Only Ji Ku, Lan Kuan, and the glazed fire dragon's corpses were not found. Ji Tianqing collected the flesh, bones, and divine soul fragments and analyzed with a serious expression. Lan Kuan would rather die than submit, and he has already self-destructed. His corpses and divine soul no longer exist. Even if I have the life-saving divine lights, I can't do anything. The glazed fire dragon was blasted into dust, and it was the first to be killed. Later, when the Divine King's clone fought with everyone, the aftermath of the battle destroyed the dust and divine soul fragments. As such, Lan Kuan and the glazed fire dragon can't be saved. As for Cuckoo, she has inherited the divine ability of the divine bird phoenix, so she should be able to be reborn. Chapter 2757. Ji Tianqing was a little depressed, and his heart was filled with regret and regret. However, Lan Kuan and the glazed fire dragon could not be saved. He was only a peak true god now, not a powerful divine king. Even if he wanted to revive Lan Kuan and the glazed fire dragon, there was nothing he could do. I hope I can still meet you in my next life. At that time, I will definitely take good care of you and not let you suffer such a tragedy again. Ji Tianqing looked at the ruins with a sorrowful gaze and murmured in his heart. Then, he put away his heavy and sorrowful heart and began the revival plan. The remains of his daughter Wushuang, his disciple White Dragon, Qianyu, and Black Dragon were all mixed together and piled up into a small mountain that was 10 feet tall. After all, Qianyu and Black Dragon had revealed their original bodies before they were killed. After they were killed, the remains that could be preserved until now were only 1,000th of their original bodies. Ji Tianqing carefully examined the pile of remains and first picked out his daughter Wushuang's remains and divine soul fragments. Within 15 minutes, he finished his selection. His once innocent and extremely cute daughter had now become a pile of bones and flesh that were as fine as sand and 9 divine soul fragments. Ji Tianqing felt extremely guilty, and his heart ached as if it was being cut by a knife. That was his most beloved and most obedient daughter. However, the matter at hand was more important. He restrained his emotions and released the life-saving divine light in the heaven-mending pearl. Swoosh! A sacred white light surged out of his palm and enveloped the pile of bones and divine soul fragments. In order to successfully revive Ji Wushuang, Ji Tianqing used 100 sets of life-saving divine light. That was the power to revive 100 martial gods. Ji Wushuang was a peak true god. After she was killed, only this little bit of remains would be left. It would definitely consume 10 times, 100 times more life-saving divine light. The facts proved that Ji Tianqing's estimation was correct. The 100 sets of life-saving divine light enveloped Ji Wushuang's remains and surged for 4 hours. It was not until 4 hours later that the divine light stopped surging. Within the white light, a petite and cute figure appeared. Her appearance was as beautiful as Yun Yao, and her temperament was innocent and cute to the extreme. She looked like she was only 8 or 9 years old. Her eyes were tightly closed, and she was in a deep sleep. Ji Wushuang was successfully resurrected. His height, appearance, bloodline, and aptitude were exactly the same as before. Ji Tianqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and his heavy heart eased a lot. He knew that although Wushuang had been resurrected, he was still weak and his divine soul was still in a heavily injured state. She would have to sleep for at least 10 years before she could wake up. As for her injuries, it would take 30 to 40 years for her to recover. It would take 100 years for his strength to recover. But none of this was important. As long as his daughter was alive, it would be a blessing. Ji Tianqing placed the unconscious Wushuang into the sword world of the burial of heaven, and let her sleep in a place where she could heal her injuries. Then he selected the white dragon's bones and soul fragments from the mountainous sea of consciousness. A quarter of an hour later, the white dragon's bones and divine soul fragments were picked out. The remains of his bones and flesh could fill up a basin, but there were only 8 pieces of his soul. Ji Tianqing released another 100 rays of life-saving divine light, enveloping the white dragon's skeleton. 6 hours later, the white dragon was also successfully revived. Of course, he was also in a comatose state. His divine soul was heavily injured, and his strength was incomparably weak. Ji Tianqing also placed the white dragon into the sword world. Next was to revive Qian Yu and the black dragon. The remaining remains of the two were obviously larger in size, and had more distinct characteristics. Of course, Qian Yu had more bones left, and the black dragon had fewer. Ji Tianqing used 120 rays of life-saving divine light to revive Qian Yu. When he revived the black dragon, not only did he use 150 rays of life-saving divine light, he also spent an additional 4 hours. Just like that, a day passed. Those that could be revived were all revived. Ji Tianqing finished casting the spell and placed Qian Yu and the black dragon into the sword world, letting them rest in a deep sleep. Although he was somewhat haggard and exhausted, he did not dare to delay. However, he didn't dare to waste any time. He quickly left the heaven-punishing planet and entered the void. Outside planet Heaven Trader, Ji Tianqing stood in the void somewhere. He looked up at the void and nodded slightly. According to his memory, the passage between the two worlds opened when the Divine King's clone descended to the mortal world was right above his head. Perhaps it was at a height of 30,000 miles, or perhaps it was at a height of 28,000 miles. In short, the error was not big. It should be in that area. After confirming the location, Ji Tianqing used the time reversal divine power again. Swoosh! Soon, a huge light screen with a radius of 1,000 feet appeared in the void in front of him. As he cast the spell, images quickly appeared on the light screen. Although those images were of the dark void, they were somewhat messy and fragmented, and they were changing rapidly. Ji Tianqing was casting the spell to reverse the time 2 months ago. After a full 15 minutes, some dazzling light appeared in the fragmented images. It was dazzling divine light of various colors, and there were many flashes of lightning. After a while, the image that Ji Tianqing wanted to see the most appeared. In the void there was a gap that was 3,000 kilometers long, and within it, divine light and lightning flashed. That was the passage between the two worlds opened by the Divine King's clone, and it had shrunk by more than half. Before long, the Divine King's clone carried the unconscious Ji Wuhan in his left hand, and Dubhe wrapped in golden light in his right hand. He arrived at the passage between the two worlds. Not far behind him, Yun Shuoyan, who was covered in blood, also followed. It was unknown what the Divine King's clone said to her, but she suddenly laughed crazily. Her blood-stained face was filled with unwillingness and despair. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows, vaguely guessing the truth. Then Yun Shuoyan burned herself in unwillingness, turning into a bloody flame that soared into the sky and rushed into the passage between the two worlds. The passage between the two worlds, which had already shrunk, expanded to 5,000 kilometers. Ji Tianqing murmured expressionlessly, "Just as I expected. Blood ignition, divine transformation. Could it be that the Divine King's clone really brought my son Wuhan and Dubhe back to the God realm?" He was very worried, and he stared at the light screen without blinking. Soon, the Divine King's clone flew toward the passage between the two worlds with Ji Wuhan and Dubhe. The Divine King's clone was about to enter the passage and return to the God realm. But at this moment, a 5-colored divine light suddenly lit up in the void not far away, and a passage between the two worlds appeared. 2 dark golden dragon claws that blotted out the sky reached out from the passage between the two worlds, violently swatting at the Divine King's clone. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing's body stiffened, and his eyes widened in disbelief. A Divine King powerhouse from the Dragon Realm? It actually attacked the Divine King's clone at this critical moment? What is it trying to do? Loot a burning house? Or is it seeking revenge? Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with shock, and his curiosity was at its peak. Then he saw a dragon claw send the Divine King's clone flying. The other dark golden dragon claw severed the Divine King's clone's left arm and snatched away the unconscious Ji Wuhan. Apart from that, the 2 dragon claws didn't do anything else, directly retracting into the passage between the two worlds and disappearing. Not long after, the passage between the two worlds disappeared. The Divine King's clone also entered the passage between the two worlds and returned to the God realm. The scene on the light screen dissipated. Ji Tianqing was stunned on the spot, silent for a long time. Chapter 2758. West Sea Dragon King? East Sea Dragon King? North Sea Dragon King? Or Golden Dragon King? Or maybe that old ruffian dragon? Ji Tianqing stood in the air, frowning as he pondered. Which Dragon King took Ji Wuhan away? Although it was two dark golden dragon claws that attacked the Divine King's clone and snatched Ji Wuhan, that didn't mean anything. The Dragon Kings that Ji Tianqing mentioned could all have that ability. That was why he pondered with a serious expression and analyzed the situation based on his memories. When Kenshin left the Five Elements world and ascended to the upper realm, he didn't directly ascend to the God realm. Under a freak combination of factors, he actually ascended to the Dragon realm. This seemed to be related to the space-time roulette. But the space-time roulette was destroyed long ago, so the result was no longer important. The Dragon realm and the God realm were two independent eternal worlds. Although the two worlds were connected and had a few special passages, it wasn't something that could be passed through by ordinary people. That was why Kenshin cultivated in the Dragon realm for more than 200 years. He also had enough understanding of the Dragon realm's situation. There were many Divine King powerhouses in the Dragon realm, even more than in the God realm. There were more than 1,000 of them. However, there were only 5 peak Divine Kings that could rule the 4 seas of the God realm and Middle Earth. Ji Tianqing knew 3 of the 5 peak Divine Kings. He had never met 2 of them before, but he had heard of them and had a basic understanding of them. As for the 3 peak Divine Kings that he knew, their relationship with him was a little complicated. One of them called him brother, and the other was a gentleman's friend. As for the guy that he called Old Ruffian Dragon, he was both a friend and a foe. It couldn't be helped. The Old Ruffian Dragon was too capricious and temperamental. His attitude towards him was the kind that admired and appreciated each other, but he was also very jealous and hated him, always going against him. Because of this, his relationship with the Old Ruffian Dragon also caused many powerhouses in the Dragon realm to be confused. If he was in danger, the Old Ruffian Dragon would be the happiest. Not only did he not lend a helping hand, he even mocked and ridiculed him, causing trouble for him, and even adding insult to injury. However, if he really encountered great danger and was about to die, the Old Ruffian Dragon's draconic personality would immediately split apart. While mocking him, they killed all his enemies and helped him out of danger. It was simply, she was talking about villains, but her hands were doing something to save him. The Grand Dragon's personality had split. The Western Sea Dragon King and the Eastern Sea Dragon King have always kept a low profile, not showing themselves before others. They do not have much interaction with me. The 2 of them shouldn't meddle in other people's business, and they may not necessarily discover that Wuhan is my son. However, the Golden Dragon King is a very close friend of mine, so there's a very good chance that he'll save me. The North Sea Dragon King and I have a good relationship. Maybe he will help me. If Wuhan was saved by them, then I wouldn't be too worried. The one I'm most worried about is that Old Ruffian Dragon. It's true that a good dragon doesn't live long, and it's a scourge for 100,000 years. Ji Tianqing didn't dare to imagine what would happen if Wuhan fell into Old Ruffian's hands. But in the end he was still relieved. Wuhan falling into the Dragon realm was better than falling into the hands of the Divine King. After thinking for a long time, he let out a sigh. When I was in the God realm, there was no Divine King or Dragon King who could interfere with the lightning tribulation and the heavenly Tao. Now that 1,000 years have passed, not only can the Divine King interfere with the lightning tribulation and the heavenly Tao to open the passage between the 2 worlds, even the Dragon King of the Dragon realm can break open the passage between the 2 worlds and interfere with the affairs of the mortal world. The world has changed. Ji Tianqing already had a premonition that the God realm and the Dragon realm would change greatly, and they would no longer be the 2 worlds he was familiar with. Forget it, let's solve the matter in front of me first. After I recover my divine sovereign realm, I'll go to the Dragon realm to find Wuhan. Then he strode across the void and rushed back to the 5 Elements world with a single step. On the way back, he had already planned out the next plan. At the same time, he also recalled the scene he saw in the dream when he was sleeping. A dream of 1,000,000 years, life and death, reincarnation. Rise and fall, wither and glory are all in front of me. As long as one is under the heavenly Tao, Even the most powerful divine king can't escape the rules of the heavenly Tao, can't escape life, death, and reincarnation. Only by transcending reincarnation can one break through the shackles of the heavenly Tao, surpass all life, and be immortal. Years ago, as a peak divine king, he had been fighting for this. He explored the realm above the divine king, seeking to transcend reincarnation and surpass the power of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, he risked his life to explore the ancient ruins. After obtaining the heaven-punishing formation, he was besieged by various divine kings and died with hatred. But in this life, he seemed to have seen the light of dawn and had the hope of taking the last step. 3 sons, huh? Haha. Interesting. Ji Tianqing returned to the vicinity of the 5 elements world, stared at the dim light of the 5 elements world, and muttered meaningfully. After a while, he landed outside the heaven-punishing planet and came in front of Yunyao. The golden ball of light with a radius of 90 feet was still wrapped around Yunyao. She was still unconscious. Her divine body had already been reformed, and the injuries to her divine soul no longer existed. Moreover, she seemed to be absorbing some kind of energy. Not only did her strength recover to the level of a half-step heavenly god, it was also continuously strengthening. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's heart moved slightly, and a bold idea appeared in his mind. After Goddess Yaoguang fell, her 7 souls turned into 7 divine pearls. Many years ago, Yao Yao refined 5 divine pearls. For so many years I have searched the entire 5 elements world, and even all the major galaxies, but I still couldn't find the 6th and 7th pearls. But now the divine light barrier protecting the 5 elements world has disappeared, and Yao Yao is resurrected here. Could it be that the divine light barrier was formed by the 6th divine pearl? Even Ji Tianqing himself was shocked by this bold guess. It's very possible. No wonder I couldn't find the 6th divine pearl, even after searching the entire 5 elements world. So it was already in front of me, but I didn't notice it, and I didn't dare to imagine it. After confirming this answer, Ji Tianqing was sure that not only would Yunyao be resurrected safely, but her strength would also skyrocket. He stopped worrying and hurriedly entered the 5 elements world. Then, he took out the small golden pagoda and returned to the Jiuqian 10 Absolutes Tower. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing appeared on the 5th level of the Divine Pagoda and entered the 6th level of the distorted spacetime through the Daoyuo Divine Formation. The distorted spacetime was empty, and there was no one. Ji Tianqing placed his daughter Wushuang, disciple by Long Qianyu, and Black Dragon in the distorted spacetime. The 2 divine beasts Bai Long and Wushuang were all unconscious, and it would take a long time for them to recover. However, Ji Tianqing released a life-saving divine light to treat their injuries one by one, so that they could wake up as soon as possible. After doing this, he began to meditate and cultivate, waiting patiently. He knew that Yunyao would wake up soon. Jiku would also be reborn and return to the distorted spacetime, although he still didn't know where Jiku was reborn. He had a strong feeling that it was definitely related to the Jiuqian 10 Absolutes Tower, and it might even be inside the Divine Pagoda. Chapter 2759. Ji Tianqing's judgment was very accurate. He had cultivated in the distorted spacetime for more than 4 years, so it had only been about 50 months. His Divine Tao foundation was very stable, and his skills had also improved. At this moment Jiku returned. 50 months had passed in the Divine Pagoda, but only 1 month had passed in the outside world. Including the 2 months she had been unconscious, she had been asleep for a total of 3 months. Not only had she returned unscathed, but she had also been reborn, becoming even more mysterious and unfathomable. She had a head of fiery red hair that reached her waist, a body of dark golden divine armor, and a dark golden trident. She was like a goddess of war that had descended from the 9 heavens. That beautiful face and unparalleled divine aura was like a divine phoenix. Without a doubt, she who had been reborn had truly inherited the phoenix's legacy. In her previous life, she had only reached the strength of a top divine lord, and had not advanced any further. She could not break through to the divine king realm even if she spent her entire life. After all, this had nothing to do with one's cultivation effort, but talent. If one's talent and perception were not enough, Even if they cultivated for 100,000 or 1,000,000 years, they would not reach the Divine King realm. But it was different now. She, who had been reborn, had the true blood of the phoenix flowing in her body, and had mastered the divine bird's legacy. She already had the absolute qualifications to reach the Divine King realm. When Ji Tianqing saw her, his eyes could not help but light up. The worry that had been hidden in his heart for a long time also dissipated. That's great. Cuckoo, you've really been resurrected. Jiku was also stunned. She stared at Ji Tianqing, and her eyes immediately turned red and filled with tears. Big brother Tianqing, you're really fine. I already knew that you were invincible. How could anything happen to you? Jiku suppressed her grief and suppressed the tears in her eyes. Like a tired bird returning to its nest, she threw herself into Ji Tianqing's embrace. The two hugged each other tightly, and their emotions were quite emotional. After a while, Jiku calmed down and hurriedly asked, "Oh right, where's eldest senior sister? And Wu Hen Wushuang Bai Long, are they still alive?" Ji Tianqing gently patted her back and said in a low voice, "They were all killed by the Divine King's clone, but Yao Yao is in the process of reviving. Moreover, it was a blessing in disguise for her. After fusing with the sixth divine orb, her power would soar to the limit. Wushuang Bai Long, Qianyu, and Hei Long were all revived by me using the heaven-mending orb. They are currently sleeping and recuperating. However, Lan Kuan self-destructed and Azurite died the earliest. I couldn't revive them." After hearing this, Jiku heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. However, she couldn't save Lan Kuan and Lu Li, which made her heart heavy and full of regret. "Big brother Tianqing, it's my fault. I killed them. Back then, you told us to stay in the Five Elements world. We should have listened to your orders and not gone to attack the heavenly star." Jiku's heart was filled with regret, as she spoke with incomparable self-blame. She could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes. She wanted to tell Ji Tianqing everything that had happened. However, Ji Tianqing had used the time reversal divine ability, and already knew what had happened. He gently shook his head and interrupted Jiku. He said in a heavy voice, "Cuckoo, you can't be blamed for this. You can't blame Yao Yao Bai Long and the others either. You were worried about my safety and went to help the heavenly star. I only regret that I couldn't hold back the Divine King's clone and let him go find you. We didn't do anything wrong. The one at fault is the heavenly star and the Divine King behind the heavenly star." Ji Tianqing raised his head and stared at the dark space. His eyes flashed with crazed killing intent. "Soon we will head to the divine world. I will definitely find out who the Divine King behind the heavenly star is. When that time comes, I will make him pay 100 times, 1,000 times the price. Even if I kill the entire divine world and kill millions of people, I will not show mercy." Jiku couldn't speak as she sobbed. She could only nod furiously. This was because she was even angrier than Ji Tianqing. She blamed herself even more and wanted to kill that Divine King even more. After a long time, Ji Tianqing finally let go of Jiku. He held her face with both hands and said in a serious tone, "Cuckoo, you stay here and recover your Divine Tao Foundation. Also take care of Wushuang Bai Long and the others. I need to leave for a while to do something." Jiku immediately understood what he meant. "Is it the heavenly star?" "Yes." Ji Tianqing nodded. Jiku hesitated for a moment and then asked, "After the successive disasters, the heavenly star's leaders and experts have all died. Now that the heavenly star is in chaos, there are only about 10 billion people left. I don't think they will be much of a threat." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said expressionlessly, "I understand what you mean, but I still have to go. The heavenly star and we cannot live under the same sky. They must pay the price. After I destroy the heavenly star, that Divine King will lose his claws in the mortal world and will not be able to continue his conspiracy. Also, this is only the first step of our revenge." Jiku did not try to dissuade him anymore and nodded in agreement. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time and immediately turned to leave. After leaving the Five Elements world, Ji Tianqing sped through the void and rushed to the heavenly star. 3 months ago, his black hole plan was about to be completed and the heavenly star was about to be destroyed. At the most crucial moment, the Divine King's clone descended into the mortal world and stopped everything. This time no one could save the heavenly star. 10 days later, Ji Tianqing appeared on the heavenly star. If the divine emperor palace still existed, even if only ruins and fences were left, he would also enter the divine emperor palace and search for clues about the divine king of the upper realm. But now the divine emperor palace was completely destroyed. Not even a speck of dust was left. He did not need to waste any more time. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing landed on a continent on the heavenly star, and used the power of the world to enter the core of the world deep in the Earth's core. With a flash of light, he arrived at the purple light ball with a radius of 70,000 miles. The condensed purple light formed a huge barrier and blocked the endless crimson lava. In the middle of the light ball, there was a sacred purple mountain that was 10,000 feet tall. Hundreds of millions of colorful veins extended from its feet. This was Ji Tianqing's second time entering this place. He was not unfamiliar with it at all. Without any hesitation, he flew directly to the sacred purple mountain and manipulated the power of the world. After a while, the violent power of the world gushed out from the heavenly star. If one was in the void, they would be able to see that the southern hemisphere of the heavenly star spewed out another 100,000 purple flames. Each purple flame was hundreds of thousands of miles tall, and erupted with the most terrifying power. A total of 100,000 purple flame light pillars burst forth with unparalleled power, and pushed the heavenly star to begin flying. Although the flying speed was very slow at first, after the heavenly star flew out for 20 million miles, its speed gradually increased. After a short 2 hours, the heavenly star's speed increased and flew out for 40 million miles. At this time, the heavenly star had already entered the gravitational circle of the black hole. With the attack of the terrifying gravitational force, the heavenly star's speed suddenly increased by several times. At the same time, the heavenly star trembled violently. Terrifying earthquakes erupted on the 2 remaining continents, and monstrous waves were also stirred up in the 3 seas. The real calamity had come. Chapter 2760. Swish. Ji Tianqing left planet Heaven Punisher and flew into the sky. He retreated 1,000,000 miles before stopping. Then, he stood quietly in the sky and admired the destruction of planet Heaven Punisher. He knew that planet Heaven Punisher and the billions of members of the Heaven Punisher were in chaos and war. The true gods of the Heaven Punisher had all died, and the remaining billions of people couldn't do anything. However, he couldn't let the Heaven Punisher live. He had to get rid of them. Who could guarantee that the Heaven Punisher wouldn't rise again in 100 or 1,000 years and sweep across the planet zones? Besides, he and his family had all been killed by the Divine King's clone. The Heaven Punisher had to bear the brunt of such a blood feud and pay the heaviest price. As planet Heaven Punisher kept accelerating, more and more areas entered the gravitational sphere. One day later, half of planet Heaven Punisher had entered the gravitational sphere. Then, an earth-shattering sound came from planet Heaven Punisher. Rumble. Ji Tianqing saw that half of planet Heaven Punisher was torn apart by the gravitational force and countless pieces splashed out. Those pieces seemed small, but they were actually thousands of miles of land and mountains. Not only that, endless seawater and lava flew out of planet Heaven Punisher and poured into the gravitational sphere. All the pieces, seawater and lava were swallowed by the giant black hole. The mysterious black hole was the most terrifying thing in the world. Nobody knew what was hidden inside. Time passed. Planet Heaven Punisher kept collapsing and disintegrating at an extremely fast speed. In less than 2 days, the entire planet Heaven Punisher had disintegrated into billions of pieces and was swallowed by the black hole. A planet that carried countless lives and witnessed the glory of generations of civilizations was destroyed just like that. It was completely swallowed by the black hole. Not even a piece of it was left. A few more hours passed. The sky became calm again. There was no wind or sound at all, as if nothing had happened. Ji Tianqing's anger and murderous intent only subsided a little after he destroyed planet Heaven Punisher. He didn't stay any longer. He turned around and returned to the 5 Elements world. Along the way, he recalled the scene in his dream and couldn't help but murmur, whether it's 100,000 years or 1,000,000 years, there are only 3,000 worlds in the void, no more, no less. Now that I have destroyed planet Heaven Trader, one of the 3,000 worlds is missing. Somewhere in the void, there should be a star that receives the protection of the heavenly axiom and produces life, evolving into a new world, right? When he thought about it this way, he became even more interested and curious about the illusory and supreme heavenly Tao. 10 days later, Ji Tianqing returned to the Five Elements world. He searched in the void, wanting to see the sleeping Yunyao, but the golden light disappeared, and Yunyao was nowhere to be found. He was overjoyed and thought to himself, could it be that Yao Yao has awakened and returned to the divine pagoda? Hence, he quickly returned to the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower, and entered the distorted space-time. He didn't see Yunyao, so he quickly went to find Jiku to ask about the situation. When the two of them met, Jiku greeted him and said eagerly, "Big brother Tianqing, big senior sister has been sleeping in the void. I was afraid that it was not safe, so I brought her back to the divine pagoda." Ji Tianqing came to a sudden realization and asked, "Then has she awakened?" Jiku shook his head and said, "Not yet. She's still sleeping, but her strength is increasing very quickly." "That's good." Ji Tianqing was relieved. "I'll go and see her." Under Jiku's lead, he flew to the depths of the distorted spacetime and saw the cocoon-like golden light ball. Yunyao, who was as beautiful as a fairy, was still sleeping in the light ball. Her divine power and divine soul aura were very stable and very powerful. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that her strength had already surpassed the half-step celestial god realm, and it was still increasing. Now she was about 40 times stronger than a peak true god. When she was 99 times stronger than a peak true god, she would reach the limit of the mortal realm and awaken. Ji Tianqing then asked Jiku, "How are Wushuang, Bailong, Qianyu and Heilong?" Jiku answered honestly, "They are still sleeping. Their injuries and strength are recovering. They will probably recover in a few more decades." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Then we'll wait for them to awaken before we plan to ascend. Before that, I still have many things to do." Jiku thought for a moment and asked, "Are we going to planet Chaotic Heaven to kill the remnants of the heaven-punishing race?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "This is just a side trip. I still have to refine some stars and increase my strength to the limit." Jiku said eagerly, "I'll go with you." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded, "Stay in the Divine Tower for now. I'll call for you when we need to fight." Okay. Jiku agreed without hesitation. She had been suppressing her hatred and killing intent. She wanted to find the remnants of the heaven-punishing race and kill them to vent her anger. One day later, Ji Tianqing controlled the power of the world and pushed the Five Elements world to fly toward planet Chaotic Heaven. 1 month later, the Five Elements world arrived near planet Chaotic Heaven and stopped in the void. Ji Tianqing and Jiku went to planet Chaotic Heaven to kill the remnants of the heaven-punishing race. His Tianqing battleship had been given to Bailong to pilot. Tianqing battleship had been destroyed during the battle with the Divine King's clone. Now Ji Tianqing and Jiku could only rely on themselves to travel through the void. It was really inconvenient. Fortunately, the Earth Spirit race in the Sword World had started to build a new battleship under the leadership of the Golden Mountain King. With his previous experience, the Golden Mountain King would definitely build an even more powerful divine battleship. 3 days later, Ji Tianqing and Jiku arrived at planet Chaotic Heaven. This planet, which used to be the main planet, was now in chaos and looked rather desolate. The 200,000 heaven-punishing soldiers and 1 million heaven-punishing craftsmen were determined to build this planet into a new home. More than 10 billion foreign race martial artists and civilians had fallen into the hands of the heaven-punishing race and become their slaves. However, when planet Chaotic Heaven encountered a calamity, more than 100,000 heaven-punishing soldiers fled here. They brought news that planet Chaotic Heaven was facing a calamity and was about to be destroyed. This caused planet Chaotic Heaven, which was originally stable, to fall into chaos. The foreign race experts who were enslaved by the heaven-punishing race all fought back violently, and the situation became more and more intense. Ji Tianqing and Jiku entered planet Chaotic Heaven and did not waste any time. They immediately started a massacre. Wherever the heaven-punishing race had the most people, they destroyed that place. It did not matter if you were a heaven-punishing soldier, a heaven-punishing craftsman, or a heaven-punishing puppet. As long as you worked for the heaven-punishing race, you would definitely die. The massacre lasted for half a month. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were invincible. They killed until the sky darkened. Heads rolled and blood flowed. Half a month later, the two of them killed more than 800,000 heaven-punishing race members before leaving planet Chaotic Heaven. The rest were all defeated soldiers scattered all over the world. They were all small factions. The two of them did not have the time to kill them one by one. The foreign race experts would naturally do it for them. It was only a matter of time. Chapter 2761. After leaving the celestial globe, Ji Tianqing did not go to other worlds to slaughter the remnants of the heaven punishers. Although there were tens of millions of heaven punishers scattered in the thousands of worlds of the various star fields. But if the heaven punishers were destroyed, those heaven punishers would be like rootless duckweeds. In less than a few decades, they would be killed by the powerhouses of the various worlds. Ji Tianqing controlled the five elements world and headed directly to the nearest galaxy. He only had one goal: choose the most suitable star and continue to refine again. 3 months later, the five elements world arrived near a galaxy. This galaxy was the only and most dazzling star core in the celestial globe. The star core that was hundreds of billions of miles long hung in the void, blooming with a brilliant light that would never be extinguished. Among them, there were tens of thousands of stars of various sizes. Basically, they were all barren stars without life. Of course, barren did not mean barren and useless. There were a few planets that seemed to be barren, but they actually contained enormous mineral resources. For example, divine stone veins, metal veins. There were also heaven and earth divine flames, as well as all kinds of wind, fire, and thunder power. Thus, Ji Tianqing chose among the stars. 2 months later, he successfully refined a metal star with a diameter of 30 million miles. 4 months later, he refined a second star with rich resources, which had a diameter of more than 40 million miles. Half a year later, he refined a third star. As time passed, Ji Tianqing continued to refine one star after another. The five elements world was still expanding. Its diameter slowly increased from 900 million miles to a diameter of 1 billion miles. Moreover, the five elements world had obtained a huge amount of resources, and its strength was rapidly increasing. As a result, Ji Tianqing's strength also rose along with it. Starting from the peak true immortal realm, it was doubled, tripled, quadrupled. 2 years later, in the five elements world, in the 9 heavens 10 absolutes tower, Yunyao was the first to wake up. The golden divine light that enveloped her had been completely absorbed by her. The truth was just as Ji Tianqing had expected. The divine light barrier that protected the five elements world was formed by the sixth divine pearl. When Yunyao learned of this in her deep sleep, she was also very shocked and in disbelief. This time, after experiencing death and rebirth, she had also undergone a complete transformation. Even though his appearance hadn't changed, his aura had become even more sacred, as if he was a peerless divine king from the 9 heavens. Her strength had also reached the pinnacle of the mortal world, 99 times that of a peak true god. Furthermore, after fusing with the 6th divine orb, she obtained a brand new power. Light divine power. That's right. The 6th divine pearl represented light. As a result, Yunyao grasped 6 special divine powers and condensed 6 types of laws. The laws of blue sea, the laws of stars, the laws of longevity, the laws of earth, the laws of wind and fire, and the laws of light. Once she ascended to the divine world, she would be able to break through to the 5th level of the heavenly god realm. Moreover, she could even condense a powerful divine core with the 6 types of laws as the foundation. In addition, Yunyao had already obtained 6 of Goddess Yaoguang's 7 spirits. In the dream, not only had she experienced millions of years, she had seen life, death, and reincarnation, she had also obtained most of Goddess Yaoguang's memories. This was the main reason for the change in her temperament. Without a doubt, the current her was very similar to Goddess Yaoguang from the ancient era. The two's appearance and temperament were 80% similar. Whether in the mortal world or the divine world, she was a top-notch goddess who could make billions of gods infatuated. When Yunyao woke up, her first reaction wasn't joy or excitement. Instead, she was in extreme pain and tears flowed down her face. The first people she thought of were Ji Tianqing, Ji Wuhen, and Ji Wushuang. Then it was Ji Ku Bailong and the 4 divine beasts. In her memories, everyone had met with misfortune and been killed by the divine king's clone. Even if she survived and benefited from the disaster, it was still extremely painful and disheartening. Fortunately, Ji Ku had been by her side the whole time. The moment she woke up, Ji Ku held her hand and gently comforted her. After Yunyao calmed down, Ji Ku explained what had happened to her. Hearing that everyone had been resurrected, Yunyao felt slightly better. However, the glazed fire dragon and Lan Kuan were dead, and Ji Wuhen was also taken away by the Almighty of the Dragon Realm. She was still filled with grief and worry. Ji Ku comforted her again. Brother Tianqing has already done his best, but Glazed and Lan Kuan really can't be saved. This is fate. Perhaps one day in the future we will surpass reincarnation and surpass the heavenly Tao, and we might be able to bring Glazed and Lan Kuan back. As for Wuhen, he was saved by the Almighty of the Dragon Realm. It's better than falling into the hands of that divine king. After Ji Ku's persuasion, Yunyao felt much better and her emotions slowly calmed down. Then she asked Ji Ku to take her to visit Ji Wushuang, Bailong, and the others. For a full 15 years, the 5 elements world had been swimming freely in the galaxy. Planets full of resources were swallowed by the 5 elements world one after another. It wasn't until the 16th year that the 5 elements world finally stopped expanding. Although the diameter of this planet still didn't exceed 1 billion kilometers, it had reached 990 million kilometers. And Ji Tianqing's strength had also reached 99 times that of a peak true god. He had already reached the limit of the mortal world. The two numbers were inexplicably similar. Perhaps it was a coincidence. Then, the 5 elements world stopped in the galaxy. Ji Tianqing returned to his peak strength and returned to the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda. At this time, more than 700 years had passed in the distorted space-time. Ji Ku and Yunyao waited patiently. They had been consolidating their divine Tao foundation and cultivating various divine abilities and consummate skills. In more than 700 years, the two of them had cultivated dozens of divine abilities. Ji Wushuang, Bailong, Qianyu, and Black Dragon had already recovered more than 600 years ago. They had been cultivating in seclusion for over 600 years, and only ended their seclusion when Ji Tianqing returned. After such a long period of seclusion, they naturally gained a lot. The two of them and the 2 divine beasts had all reached half-step celestial god realm and mastered dozens of divine abilities and secret skills. Everything was ready to go. After Ji Tianqing reunited with everyone, he prepared the ascension plan. However, there were still a few problems to solve before ascension. If everyone ascended, what about the 5 elements world? Continue to stay in the mortal world? Of course, Ji Tianqing wasn't willing. He had already merged with the 5 elements world. With the 5 elements world, he was immortal. He also had endless source stones and could use the power of the world. He really wanted to take the 5 elements world away. However, it was obviously unrealistic to take a planet with him. Since ancient times, such a ridiculous thing had never happened in tens of thousands of years of history. The second problem, Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and White Dragon naturally had to ascend to the divine world. However, Black Dragon would definitely ascend to the dragon realm. Qianyu might also enter the dragon realm. In this case, everyone would be separated once they ascended. Moreover, they wouldn't be able to reunite for the next few hundred years or even thousands of years. Chapter 2762. In the Twisted Space. Ji Tianqing, Yunyao, Qianyu, and Black Dragon were all there. Everyone was discussing countermeasures. Ji Tianqing expressed his thoughts to everyone. First, I don't want to abandon the 5 elements world. It's very, very important. I have a feeling that once I uncover some ancient mysteries in the future, it will be as important as the God realm and the Dragon realm. Second, after activating the laws of heaven and earth, the heavenly Tao's power will lead us to ascend. The 5 of us will go to the God realm, but Qianyu and Black Dragon will most likely enter the Dragon realm. Moreover, the God realm and the Dragon realm have many ascension pools. Even if the 5 of us ascend to the God realm, we will land in different ascension pools. The God realm is very big, hundreds or even thousands of times bigger than the 5 elements world. Those ascension pools are scattered in every corner of the God realm. Once we are separated, it will be difficult for us to meet for hundreds or even thousands of years. Therefore, we can't be separated. We must ascend to the God realm or the dragon realm together. Hearing his words, everyone looked troubled and began to discuss among themselves. White Dragon smiled bitterly. Master, although you are the most powerful person in history, and can always create miracles, Ascension Pool has never been used before. However, something like ascending with a ball had never happened before, and it was impossible to accomplish. If you do it, where will the heavenly Tao's face go? Jiku nodded. Although the Five Elements world is definitely extraordinary and might be one of the main worlds in the past, but ascending with the Five Elements world is too absurd and bizarre. Ji Wushuang, who was 5 feet tall and looked like she was 10 years old, was as innocent and cute as ever. She looked up at Ji Tianxing, blinked her big eyes, and said, "Father, it's very simple if you don't want us to be separated. We will all stay in the Five Elements world. You can bring the Five Elements world alone and ascend to the God realm." The little girl's thoughts were more innocent. Yunyao stroked her head, smiled, and shook her head. Shuang what you said is not a bad idea. But the problem is that your father can't bring the Five Elements world with him. Everyone agreed with Yunyao's words and nodded. However, Yunyao paused. She suddenly thought of something and her eyes lit up. Right, we've been neglecting a problem. Ji Tianxing, Jiku, and the others all looked at her expectantly. What is it? Mistress, could it be that Master has hopes of ascending with the Five Elements world? Yunyao smiled and nodded. That's right. Although the chances are slim, we can still give it a try. Jiku was full of doubts and could not help but ask, "Eldest senior sister, what's going on?" Yunyao, Jiku, and the rest also frowned and thought of other methods. Everyone was silent, their hearts somewhat heavy. If they could not bring the Five Elements world away, their ascension plan would be obstructed. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind as he thought of a certain possibility. Got it. Everyone stopped thinking and turned to look at him. Tianxing, have you thought of another way? Yunyao asked. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "If I directly shrink the Five Elements world like this, I will definitely destroy this world. If I have a divine artifact with a space of 1 billion miles, I can store the entire Five Elements world. Moreover, this divine artifact will change its size according to my wishes. In fact, it can always be hidden in my body. In this way, won't I be able to bring the Five Elements world with me and ascend?" Hearing this, everyone's eyes brightened, and they revealed hopeful looks. But soon the light in everyone's eyes dimmed again. Jiku smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Tianxing, your idea is very good and indeed feasible. But how can we have such a powerful divine artifact that can store the entire Five Elements world?" Everyone nodded. Among the divine artifacts that they currently had, the highest grade was a heavenly divine artifact forged from source stones. It was impossible for a divine artifact of this grade to store the Five Elements world. Ji Tianxing revealed a confident smile and said, "Cuckoo. Have you forgotten? Back then I plucked 18 stars and refined them into the heavenly star chain. As long as you have the strength of a divine king or a king-grade divine artifact, you can store a star. Coincidentally, I happen to have a king-grade divine artifact here." As he spoke, he took out the heaven-mending pearl in his mind. Swoosh! The thumb-sized heaven-mending pearl floated in the void, emitting a dense white light. Everyone's spirits were lifted, revealing expressions of excitement and anticipation. Chapter 2763. Among the people present, only Yunyao and Jiku knew that Ji Tianxing had the heaven-mending pearl. Of course, Qian Yu and Black Dragon also counted. Everyone knew that the heaven-mending pearl was an ancient divine artifact with the heaven-defying effect of a divine artifact. But no one could guarantee that such a thumb-sized divine pearl could hold a five-element world with a diameter of more than 900 million miles. The gap between the two was more than billions of times. Therefore, when Ji Tianxing activated his technique, everyone held their breaths and stared at it with their hearts in their throats. Swoosh! Under his control, the thumb-sized heaven-mending pearl flew towards the five-element world. During the flight, the heaven-mending pearl expanded at an extremely exaggerated speed. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, the thumb-sized heaven-mending pearl expanded to a radius of 10,000 feet. Swoosh! With another flash of white light, the heaven-mending pearl expanded to a radius of 20 miles. Swoosh! With another flash of white light, the heaven-mending pearl expanded to a radius of 2,000 miles. As the heaven-mending pearl flew through the void, it would flash once every moment and expand by dozens or hundreds of times. Everyone stood quietly in the void, their eyes never leaving the heaven-mending pearl. Even though the heaven-mending pearl was getting further and further away from everyone, its size was expanding rapidly, and it seemed to be getting closer and closer to everyone. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Soon a day passed. The heaven-mending pearl had expanded to a radius of 100 million miles, floating above the five-element world. Even though it was already so big that it covered the sky, but compared to the five-element world it was still too small, only 1/10. Ji Tianqing still did not stop circulating his technique. He continued to use his mind to control the heaven-mending pearl, expanding it infinitely. 2 days later, the heaven-mending pearl expanded to a radius of 200 million miles. Ji Tianqing was already struggling to control the heaven-mending pearl, and his mind was also quite tired. But he had no intention of stopping to rest and continued to expand the heaven-mending pearl. 5 days later, the heaven-mending pearl finally expanded to a radius of 500 million miles. It was enough to hold half of the five-element world. However, the potential of the heaven-mending pearl had been exhausted, and Ji Tianqing's mind was also extremely tired. There was nothing he could do. The heaven-mending pearl's power had not recovered to 10%. Even though it was a king-grade artifact, it had reached its limit. At this time Yunyao, Ji Ku, Ji Tianqing, Ji Wushuang, Bai Long, and the others all saw through Ji Tianqing's situation. Seeing his weak state of mind and pale complexion, everyone's hearts clenched, feeling extremely worried. Tianqing, we're here to help you. Yunyao decisively channeled her energy. Her palms released dazzling divine light and infused it into Ji Tianqing's body, helping him replenish his divine power and maintain his mind. Let's go too. Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and Bai Long also moved to help. Even Qian Yu and Black Dragon used their divine power and divine soul power to help Ji Tianqing. Instantly, Ji Tianqing's divine power surged, and his mind regained its clarity. Under his control, the heaven-mending orb continued to expand. Another 3 days passed. The heaven-mending orb finally expanded to a radius of 800 million miles. It could already contain 80% of the five elements world. However, the heaven-mending orb stopped expanding again. Everyone's power had reached its peak. We're not strong enough. What should we do? Just a little bit more and we would have succeeded. Take a divine pill or use a forbidden secret technique to forcefully increase our power. No. Increasing our power by a few times in a short period of time will cause serious side effects. Then what should we do? Everyone was anxious, but there was nothing they could do. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said, "Don't worry, everyone. I have an idea." As he spoke, he quickly absorbed the power of the five elements world. Swoosh! Within the five elements world, thousands of divine and golden rays flew out and entered his body. His divine power and mind surged again, and his mind became 100 times more energetic. Forcefully absorbing a large amount of world power caused his body to swell and become several times thicker. No matter how tough his meridians and divine body were, they could not withstand such violent world power and began to tear and strain. However, Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth and continued to control the heaven-mending orb to expand. 820 million miles. 850 million miles, 890 million miles. After half a day, the heaven-mending orb finally expanded to a radius of 1 billion miles. At this time the heaven-mending orb was as big as the five elements world. No, it was a little bigger than the five elements world. It was like a sacred, white and flawless star, floating above the five elements world. We finally succeeded. It's not easy. We can finally leave with the five elements world. Yunyao, Ji Ku, and the others felt their blood boil when they saw this scene. They revealed expressions of joy and excitement. Ji Tianqing controlled the heaven-mending orb and split it into two halves from the middle. Like two super huge bowls, they slowly covered the five elements world. As the two super huge bowls slowly closed, the five elements world was gradually swallowed and absorbed into the heaven-mending orb. After a full 3 days, Ji Tianqing finally completed this unprecedented and earth-shattering feat. After the two super huge bowls closed, it just happened to contain the five elements world. And inside the five elements world there were no changes. However, this could not be considered a success. Ji Tianqing forced his tired body and continued to cast spells, controlling the heaven-mending orb to slowly shrink. Swoosh! As time passed, the heaven-mending orb shrank at an extremely fast speed. 1 billion miles, 900 million miles, 800 million miles. While the heaven-mending orb was shrinking, Ji Tianqing had been paying attention to the situation of the five elements world. Everything before was his idea, and it seemed feasible. However, the most important problem was that if the heaven-mending orb shrank, the five elements world would also be compressed and become smaller, and then all his efforts would be in vain. The heaven-mending orb shrank to the size of a thumb. If the five elements world was also shrunk to that size, the entire world would be completely destroyed. Not a single life would be left. In that case, what was the point of taking away the five elements world? Fortunately, the worst result that Ji Tianqing expected did not happen. The surface of the heaven-mending orb shrank, but the internal space was still as big as before, with a radius of 1 billion miles. This divine orb was indeed miraculous and heaven-defying. Just like a spatial ring, the surface was just a ring, but the inside could hold a mountain. And the heaven-mending orb was a king-grade divine artifact. Once it recovered to its peak, not to mention holding the five elements world, even if it held 10 more, it would not be a problem. Ji Tianqing was completely relieved. After a full 2 days, the heaven-mending orb returned to its original appearance, returning to the size of a thumb. The void regained its calm, and the five elements world disappeared. Swoosh! The heaven-mending orb flew back in front of Ji Tianqing and landed in his hand. He pinched the heaven-mending orb between his index and middle fingers and carefully sized it up. He saw a strange and magnificent scene. The heaven-mending orb, which was as clear as white jade, contained the five elements world that had shrunk hundreds of millions of times. It still looked clear and exquisite. Moreover, the five elements world did not suffer any adverse effects. The martial artists and the common people in the world did not even know what had happened. Yuniao, Jiku, and the others were both shocked and curious. This is unbelievable. This is simply a method that only a divine king has. Our wish has finally been fulfilled. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded and said, "Everyone enter the five elements world and recuperate in peace. Next, I will prepare to ascend." Chapter 2764. The five elements world was successfully stored in the heaven-mending pearl. Ji Tianqing's ascension plan was already halfway to success. Yuniao, Jiku, and the others were no longer worried and entered the heaven-mending pearl one after another. What surprised them was that the heaven-mending pearl was only the size of a thumb from the outside. Once they entered the heaven-mending pearl, it was a vast world with a radius of 1 billion miles and the entire five elements world. They were filled with shock and amazement as they entered the five elements world and returned to the God Pagoda to rest. Before they rested, everyone gathered together. Yuniao said to everyone, the next time we leave the God Pagoda, we should have already ascended to the God realm. At that time, everyone will be baptized by the heavenly Tao in the ascension pool. That is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so you have to grasp it well. Everyone nodded in agreement. The innocent and naive Ji Wushuang raised his head to look at his mother Yuniao and asked, "Mother, what is the ascension pool? Is it like taking a bath when we are baptized in the pool?" Yuniao smiled and reached out to stroke Ji Wushuang's little head. Bai Long and Jiku had ascended once, so they naturally knew what the ascension pool was. However, Qian Yu and Black Dragon had never experienced it before, so they looked forward to it, but they were also worried and confused. Seeing this, Yuniao looked at Jiku and said, "Cuckoo, you and Bai Long have stayed in the God realm for a few hundred years, so you are very familiar with the God realm. However, Shuang Qianyu and Black Dragon have never been there before, so they know nothing about the God realm. Since we have nothing to do, why don't you tell them about the God realm?" Jiku naturally nodded in agreement and smiled. Shuang'er, don't worry. The Ascension Pool is a pool formed by the heavenly Tao, so there is no danger. It is said that there are thousands of Ascension Pools in the Dragon Realm and thousands in the God Realm. Those Ascension Pools appear randomly in different regions and change their positions every 100 years. Therefore, no one knows which Ascension Pool we will appear in. If we are lucky, the Ascension Pool will be on a few continents not far from the cities and God nations. If we are unlucky and the Ascension Pool appears in a dangerous place, then we will be unlucky. Qian Yu and Black Dragon nodded as they listened, praying in their hearts. However, Ji Wushuang wasn't too concerned about this issue. She tugged on Jiku's sleeve and asked worriedly, "Second mother, what exactly is in the Ascension Pool?" Jiku gently caressed her small face and explained, "The Ascension Pool is filled with divine lightning liquid and 8 other types of God power. It's like a vast and misty ocean. To ordinary true gods, tempering their bodies in the Ascension Pool was like being reborn. It would be painful and torturous, but to us it's not torture, it's enjoyment." Hearing this, Ji Wushuang's furrowed brows relaxed, revealing a sweet smile. And as long as it doesn't hurt, Shuang'er is most afraid of pain. Qian Yu hurriedly asked, "Sister Ku, if we go through the baptism of the Ascension Pool, will we be able to break through to the heavenly God realm?" Jiku nodded and said, "After going through the tempering of the Ascension Pool, they will obtain great benefits. Ordinary people would basically increase their cultivation by 1 level. Geniuses would normally increase their cultivation realm by 2 levels, or break through a major bottleneck. We're all half-step celestial deities. After going through the Ascension Pool's baptism, we'll definitely break through to the heavenly God realm. Not just that, Shuang'er, Qian Yu, and the Black Dragon should be able to reach 3rd level celestial deity realm. I should be able to reach 4th level celestial deity realm. Eldest senior sister and big brother Tianqing might reach 5th level celestial deity realm. Once you break through to the heavenly God realm, don't be in a hurry to leave the Ascension Pool. Stay in the Ascension Pool first and take the opportunity to condense divine Tao laws and form a divine spark." Divine spark? Ji Wushuang blinked her big eyes and said, full of curiosity, "Is it divine Tao laws condensing together like a little baby, stored in our stomach? If that's the case, wouldn't it be like mother carrying me and big brother?" Without waiting for her to speak, everyone could not refrain from laughing. Cuckoo hurriedly shook her head and explained, "Shuang'er's first half is right. It's indeed condensing the divine Tao laws that we grasp together. But the divine spark isn't a little baby. It's like a piece of gem. It will exist in the depths of our sea of consciousness. That is our divine soul and the source of power, even more important than our lives." Ji Wushuang, Qian Yu, and the Black Dragon all nodded their heads to express that they understood. Qian Yu hesitated for a bit and could not resist asking, "Previously, old Ji said that the divine realm is vast like smoke, several hundred times larger than the 5 elements world. Then just what is the divine realm like? Are there continents, oceans, city-states, kingdoms too? Are the life forms in the divine realm all deities above true God realm?" This time, not waiting for Jiku to explain, the White Dragon beat him to it and answered, "Little fox, Master didn't say anything at all, nor is he exaggerating. The divine realm is indeed 1,000 times larger than the 5 elements world. That is a main world that exists eternally after all. The divine realm has a total of 4 continents, 9 great sea regions, 36 deity realms, and 108 grotto heavens. That place is truly a place where myriad races stand in great numbers, myriad countries contend for supremacy, heavens chosen as plentiful as clouds, heroes rising together. Disregarding other things, just those 4 continents are divided into 100 divine regions. Each divine region has 100 divine kingdoms. In the 9 great sea regions, there are also countless divine kingdoms and forces that have built all kinds of strange city-states and tribes. As for the 36 deity realms and 108 grotto heavens, they are all super forces of the divine realm. Ordinary divine monarchs cannot afford to offend them. Only our master, who had reached the peak of the divine monarch realm back then, dared to sweep through the 36 deity realms and 108 grotto heavens before breaking through to the divine king realm. All the young geniuses of that generation were all crushed by our master once. When the White Dragon spoke of these past events, His face and eyes were full of memories and pride. The black dragon also felt his blood boil, very much looking forward to it. Only Qian Yu's body trembled, and he said somewhat worriedly, "In that case, didn't old Ji offend all the super forces? Then when we go to the divine realm, won't we be like foxes with our tails between our legs?" The white dragon immediately laughed disdainfully and said, "Ha ha, we are not worried. What are you afraid of? Anyway, our master has changed his identity now. At most, he will crush them again." Qian Yu thought deeply and nodded repeatedly, "And that's a good idea." Ji Wushuang tugged at the white dragon's sleeves and asked, "Eldest senior brother, do all the people in the divine realm have strength above true God?" The white dragon hurriedly shook his head and explained, "That's not it. Even though the divine realm is vast, with boundless resources, myriad races standing in great numbers, extremely prosperous, most of the people in the divine realm are ordinary. However, 80% of the living beings were ordinary people, which meant that their strength was below the true God realm. In the divine realm, regardless of whether it is martial sage or void god, they can only be considered ordinary people. The most common deities are true gods. 5th level celestial deity and above are experts. Reaching divine lord realm is a powerhouse. 5th level divine lord realm and above, that is the city lord or monarch that rules over myriad deities. As for divine king powerhouses, each region only has around 10 or so. Only then did Qian Yu and the black dragon reveal looks akin to being relieved of a heavy burden, both heaving a sigh in relief. "That's good. I thought that we would become the weaklings at the bottom after ascending to the divine realm. Looks like we can become experts not long after ascending to the divine realm." Chapter 2765. In the void, Ji Tianqing had already put the heaven-mending pearl back into his body. At this moment, the heaven-mending pearl had shrunk to the size of a mung bean, and was floating in his sea of consciousness. Even the sword of burial of heaven had been put back into his body. He stood proudly in the void and stared at the galaxy in front of him. He said to himself with emotion, "After 1100 years, I'm going back to the God realm again. There's no longer anyone or anything in this mortal world that I'm reluctant to part with." Indeed, the people that he was reluctant to part with were all in the 5 elements world, and he carried them with him. Going to the God realm, it's time to resolve the grudge from 1,000 years ago. When the time comes, I'm afraid that I won't have time to conserve my energy or plan slowly. It'll be a bloody battle. But I'm not afraid. Even if I have to kill everyone in the God realm, I'll turn those 5 bastards into ashes. Even though it had been more than 1,000 years, the hatred that was engraved in his heart had not dissipated. Instead, it had become even clearer. Ji Tianqing calmed his emotions and dispelled all distracting thoughts. He began to release the laws of heaven and earth. He slowly raised his palms and released his strongest divine power, releasing the laws of the 5 elements. Swoosh! He pushed his palms forward, and a colorful divine light surged out from his palms. Suddenly, the colorful divine light condensed into a halo of light that covered 100 miles and enveloped Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing channeled his energy again and released the laws of stars. Swoosh! Endless gold and silver divine light surged out from his palms and formed a halo around him. Suddenly, the halo around him became even more brilliant, like a dazzling star. Next, Ji Tianqing released the laws of space. The surging white divine light formed a halo of light that covered 100 miles around him. As he waved his palms for the 4th time, the last law of earth also surged out. Swoosh! The dark yellow divine light condensed into a halo of light that covered 100 miles around him. Up until now, Ji Tianqing had only mastered these 4 laws. Among them, the laws of 5 elements and stars were laws that true gods could master. But the laws of earth and space were laws that only heavenly gods could master. In fact, when Ji Tianqing was asleep, he saw the passage of millions of years in his dream. He gained enlightenment and vaguely touched upon the laws of life, death, and reincarnation. Of course, he didn't even comprehend a trace of Upanishad. He only vaguely understood some principles. However, that was a power and domain that only godly king experts could reach. With his current strength, he was simply too weak. After Ji Tianqing struck out with 4 different kinds of divine Tao laws, He madly circulated his God force, pushing his God force and potential to the limit. He spared no effort to maintain the operation of the four divine Tao laws at all costs. Instantly his star, which was hundreds of miles wide, became even more dazzling. That incomparably bright divine light soared into the sky. Time passed quietly. Every breath was torture for Ji Tianqing. However, he held on with all his might. As long as he could hold on for 100 breaths of time, he would succeed. When breaking through to the heavenly God stage, the more heavenly Tao laws one grasps, the more powerful the Godhead one condenses, and the smoother one's future cultivation of the divine way will be. Unfortunately, I only grasp 4 kinds of divine Tao laws, exactly the same as back then. However, I have the experience of ascension once and made preparations in advance. The other few kinds of powers in the ascension pool, I've also grasped them to the limit and are on the verge of forming laws. After I enter the ascension pool, I can still master a few more kinds of divine Tao laws. Ji Tianqing supported the operation of divine Tao laws and evoked the resonance of heavenly Tao power as he calculated in his heart. Unknowingly, 100 breaths of time passed. Normally this bit of time was very short, but now it became very long and torturous, virtually exhausting Ji Tianqing's divine power and mental strength. Fortunately, he successfully held on. Rumble. In the boundlessly high void, heaven-shocking divine thunder suddenly sounded out. In the darkness, 5-colored divine light appeared out of thin air, carrying endless lightning, pouring down like a monstrous flood. Swoosh! In a blink of an eye, that boundless divine light and lightning drowned a radius of 1,000 miles. Ji Tianqing and his 4 kinds of divine Tao laws were all enveloped by endless divine light and lightning. This was the power of heavenly Tao, the will of heavenly Tao that brought him out of the mortal world and ascended to the divine world. It was not easy for ordinary gods to want to ascend. Even a genius with exceptional aptitude had to make decades of preparation and try dozens or hundreds of times before they could trigger the power of heavenly Tao. Just like Yun Shuoyan back then deciding to take Dubhe and escape from planet Heaven Crusher. She also needed decades of preparation before she could take Dubhe and ascend to the upper realm. And now Ji Tianqing succeeded in one try. Endless 5-colored divine light and lightning transformed into a vortex with a radius of 1,000 miles, spinning rapidly. In a short 10 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing and the 4 circles of light around him were swallowed without a trace. After a long time, the dazzling divine light and lightning dissipated. When the void calmed down, there was nothing left. Ji Tianqing had long disappeared. He had already left the mortal world and ascended to the divine world. Even though Ji Tianqing had ascended once back then. But that time he had borrowed the power of the space-time roulette and arrived at the dragon realm in a daze. This time was different. Ji Tianqing experienced the entire ascension process very clearly and calmly. First, there was a dazzling scene in front of him. The divine light and lightning were dazzling. Then his vision turned black, and his heart suddenly jumped, because the sacred and vast power of heavenly Tao wrapped around him and tore through the void, flying toward the endless sky. That feeling was like a mortal standing on flat ground suddenly being grabbed by a large hand and instantly lifted high into the sky, entering the void. That's right. The distance between the trichiliocosm and the divine world was like the distance between a mortal and the void. It seemed that they were not far apart, one in the sky and one on the ground. But in reality, there was a transparent barrier between the two. Those who were not strong enough would never be able to break through it. It was also like a fish in the sea, looking up at the sky across the frozen sea. Unless the fish turned into a dragon, it would not be able to break through the ice and fly in the sky. Swoosh! Just as Ji Tianqing was comprehending with all his heart, the power of heavenly Tao wrapped around him, broke through the barrier between the two worlds, and entered the divine world. In an instant, the majesty of the heavenly Tao was even more powerful and vast, and an even more vast aura filled his body. Even the pressure and divine power around him suddenly became hundreds of times denser. In other words, the pressure he was under also became enormous. Such a strange yet familiar feeling caused a thought to flash through Ji Tianqing's mind. Divine world, I'm back. In the next moment, he entered a sea of dazzling divine light, and only the sound of thunder and splashing water could be heard. The invisible power of heavenly Tao that wrapped around him also quietly disappeared. Ji Tianqing stopped in the middle of the colorful ocean, quietly floating in the air. The familiar feeling calmed him down, and he opened his eyes to look around. He saw that he was surrounded by boundless light purple seawater, which was crackling with electric arcs and thunderclaps. In the sea there were colorful divine lights mixed in, and they were incomparably gorgeous. Chapter 2766. This scene in front of him Ji Tianqing was very familiar with. This was the Ascension Pool. There were thousands in the divine world, and there were also thousands in the dragon realm, and they were exactly the same. The seemingly faint purple ocean was actually lightning liquid condensed from divine lightning. Therefore, the Ascension Pool was also called the Lightning Pool. The ascenders from the 3,000 worlds, after entering the lightning pool, would be tempered by the lightning liquid. This way, the divine body would be tempered and strengthened further, becoming even stronger, and also able to adapt to the enormous pressure of the divine world faster. After all, the divine world was an eternal main world, the spatial barrier was 1,000 times stronger, heaven and earth divine power was also 1,000 times stronger. Living, walking, flying, and fighting in the divine world was 1,000 times harder than in the mortal world. Regarding this point, Ji Tianqing understood it very thoroughly. He had long been prepared to borrow the lightning pool to further increase his strength. The rainbow divine light mixed in the endless lightning liquid was divine power of 8 different attributes. There was blood soul divine power, frost ice divine power, heavenly wind divine power, star divine power, longevity divine power, transformation divine power, spatial divine power, and soul shaping divine power. These 8 divine powers all had different effects. The first 4 divine powers were more common. Most ascenders mastered the corresponding laws. And the last 4 divine powers were all heavenly deity-level powers. Normally speaking, 99% of ascenders could not master these 4 types of powers. Apart from divine lightning and the 8 divine powers, a 9th type of power would occasionally appear in the Ascension Pool. That was the opportunity bestowed by the heavenly Tao at random. What kind of opportunity was it? What power? When did it descend? Nobody knew these. There had once been many strong people who spent tens of thousands of years to study the law of opportunity's appearance. The conclusion was that there was no law at all. However, the ascenders who obtained the opportunity would all possess extremely powerful combat strength, or extraordinary natural endowments. As long as these people did not die prematurely, they would all have great achievements. The worst could reach the Divine Lord realm, and most of the lucky ones became divine kings. It was precisely because of this that the heavenly Tao opportunity appeared incomparably mysterious and incomparably precious. But very unfortunately, almost all ascenders came to the divine world for the first time. They were filled with the unknown and reverence towards the divine world, and did not know the existence of opportunity at all. Therefore, ascenders who could obtain lucky chances were all 1 in a million lucky people. Ji Tianqing stayed in the lightning pool for a while before he sorted out his thoughts and plans. First, he let everyone enter the lightning pool to receive the baptism and transformation. After that, he refined the divine power within the lightning pool, and condensed the divine Tao laws. Then, he would break through to the heavenly God realm and condense a Godhead. After making up his mind, he began to check on the situation of the heaven-mending pearl. The heaven-mending bead was still floating in his sea of consciousness, completely undamaged. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief and continued to check. Inside the heaven-mending pearl, the 1 billion kilometers of space was still intact. The 5 elements world was also peaceful, and nothing unexpected happened. Only then did Ji Tianqing feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Then he released Yunyao, Jiku, and the others. Swoosh! Swoosh! Everyone flew out of the heaven-mending pearl one after another and entered the lightning pool. Before everyone ascended, Jiku and the white dragon had introduced them to the lightning pool. But when everyone stood in the lightning pool and saw the beautiful scenery around them, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "We've finally ascended to the divine realm. Divine realm, my little white dragon in the waves is back. Wow! It's indeed a vast sea formed by lightning liquid. Second mother didn't lie to me. Soaking in the lightning pool doesn't hurt at all. It's very comfortable. What a gorgeous divine light, shining in the lightning liquid. I've changed my mind. Not only do I want to cultivate the divine thunder law, but I also want to refine a few more types of energy and condense them into laws. Everyone was excited, full of joy and anticipation. Ji Tianqing understood everyone's feelings. After waiting for a while and waiting for everyone to calm down, he reminded them, the ascension pool is formed by the will of the heavenly Tao. It's absolutely safe here. Everyone can cultivate without worry. No one will disturb you. Use the lightning liquid to temper your body, while refining various types of divine power. Everyone do your best. Try to refine as many types of divine power as possible. After breaking through to the heavenly God realm, you can condense a divine spark. No matter who finishes cultivating first, don't be in a hurry to leave the lightning pool. Wait for everyone, because we still don't know what's going on outside the lightning pool. After pausing for a while, he added, if everyone discovers the 9th type of mysterious energy, you must inform everyone. That's a heavenly Tao opportunity. Of course, the probability of a heavenly Tao opportunity appearing is very low. There's no need for everyone to search for it. Everyone heard it clearly and nodded to show that they understood. Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating for everyone to disperse and do their own things. After everyone left, he stopped where he was and began to cultivate. First, I'll refine the power of the divine thunder, then the other types of divine power. As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianqing started to cultivate and absorb the power of the lightning liquid. The lightning liquid in the lightning pool was the purest form of divine thunder, without any impurities. Ji Tianqing had already grasped a few types of lightning, so refining them was twice the result with half the effort. In a short 3 days, he had refined the power of the divine thunder to the limit. Then he absorbed the dark red divine light from the purple lightning liquid and refined the blood divine power. This was the power of a true god. It could greatly strengthen one's body, bloodline, and physique. Logically speaking, Ji Tianqing's body should have been strengthened to the limit long ago. Even if he refined the blood divine power, it could not be strengthened anymore. However, that was in the mortal world where there was the suppression of the heavenly Tao. Now that he was in the divine world, he was no longer suppressed by the heavenly Tao and could rapidly increase his strength. In a mere 4 days, Ji Tianqing grasped the blood divine power and his body was strengthened 9 times. Next was the ice divine power. This was also the power of a true god. It was the evolution of the water divine power of the 5 elements. Ji Tianqing did not mind. He absorbed the ice blue divine light from the lightning liquid and quickly refined it. Third was the heavenly wind divine power. It was also the power of a true god. After refining it, flying in the divine world would be several times faster. Ji Tianqing accepted it all. Ji Tianqing ignored the 4th star divine power. He had already grasped the laws of the stars. Next, there were the longevity, transformation, space, and soul sculpting divine powers, all of which were at the heavenly god level. Space divine power was directly excluded. The longevity divine power could greatly increase one's lifespan and strengthen one's body and soul. Almost all heavenly gods could refine this power. The transformation divine power was amazing. After mastering it, one could change their size and even take on various shapes. Its effect was similar to the 72 transformations. As for the soul sculpting divine power, it specialized in strengthening one's soul. It could strengthen one's soul and slightly increase one's talent and comprehension. Ji Tianqing accepted all 3 of these heavenly god-level powers. After 28 days, Ji Tianqing successfully refined 7 types of divine power. At the same time, the lightning liquid's refinement had also reached its peak. His bloodline, flesh, blood, divine power, and soul were all strengthened in all aspects. His overall combat strength had increased by at least 6 times. Next, Ji Tianqing naturally broke through the true god level and stepped into the heavenly god level. Chapter 2767. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the lightning liquid, both eyes tightly shut. He was currently breaking through to the celestial deity realm, and had already maintained this posture for half a month without moving. Dazzling 5-colored divine light enveloped his entire body, flickering indeterminately. Right at this moment, the vast and surging divine power in his body boiled to the peak, successfully breaking through the shackles. Boom! It was only to hear thunder erupting from within his body, giving off a series of muffled sounds like a flash flood. Just like that, he reached the celestial deity realm without any difficulty. Of course, he was only at the first-level celestial deity realm right now. He still had not finished cultivating, continuing to sit cross-legged, circulating and assaulting the next realm. The terrifying power accumulated in his body was still continuing to boil, surging in his bloodline and divine body. After all, his strength foundation before ascending already reached 99 times the mortal realm limit. 7 days later, another muffled rumbling of thunder sounded out from Ji Tianqing's body again. He released divine light once more, his entire body shining with 5-colored brilliance. Second-level celestial deity realm already. But he did not stop yet, still assaulting the next realm. 8 days later, third-level celestial deity realm. 18 days later, fourth-level celestial deity realm. A month later, fifth-level celestial deity realm. Ji Tianqing originally thought that his potential and foundation would help him charge to the 5th level, and it would calm down. But he did not expect that the vast and surging divine power in his body was still violent and fierce. Continue cultivating. Another half a month later. Rumble. The familiar muffled thunder sounded out from his body once more. He actually broke through to the 6th-level celestial deity realm. Only all the way until now did the boiling divine blood and divine power gradually calm down. Ji Tianqing was deeply gratified, circulating and regulating his breathing for 3 days, stabilizing his divine Tao foundation. All the accumulation done in the mortal realm previously was for today's eruption. Originally, I could only erupt to the 5th level. Previously, I refined 7 types of divine power before I could erupt to the 6th-level celestial deity realm. It's worth it. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied. Then he started condensing divine Tao laws. The first one was naturally divine lightning laws. In the mortal realm, he grasped the power of lightning before transcending the tribulation. Now, condensing divine lightning laws was simply as easy as flipping his hand. In just 5 days he had successfully merged the 4 types of lightning with the Heaven's Path divine lightning in the lightning pool. He had used 5 different types of divine lightning to condense the most unique divine lightning law. He was definitely at the heavenly god tier, perhaps even far beyond the heavenly god tier. The second was the law of blood. It only took him 8 days to successfully condense it. The third was the law of ice. Similarly, it took him 8 days to successfully condense it. The fourth law was the heavenly wind law. It was still completed in 8 days. Next, he needed to condense heavenly god-level nomological laws, which was slightly more difficult. He had successfully condensed the longevity law in 15 days. The law of transformation was completed in 16 days. The law of soul molding was completed in 18 days. At this point, Ji Tianqing had finished cultivating for more than 150 days, close to half a year. He had broken through to the 6th level of the heavenly god realm and grasped 11 types of divine Tao laws. But this was not the end. The most important thing had come. Condense a godhead. Even though Ji Tianqing reached the 6th level celestial deity realm and grasped 11 laws, however, he was still not a true heavenly god. Only those who had condensed a godhead could be considered a true heavenly god. The method of condensing a godhead, Ji Tianqing could not be any more familiar with it. 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical forms plus a lifetime of divine power. Then fusing all of the divine Tao laws, it would be a success. But this process was dangerous and tedious, consuming a lot of time. Ji Tianqing had plenty of patience. He continued to cultivate. First, use the divine soul as the foundation, then muster up his lifetime of divine power, the 2 fusing. 3 months later, the divine soul and divine power successfully fused without any errors. After the 2 fused, they formed a thumb-sized 5-colored light ball. This ball of light was the embryonic form of the godhead. Then Ji Tianqing fused divine Tao laws inside. from simple to difficult, from low to high. Starting from the 5 elements laws, then star law, ice law, heavenly wind law, blood law. Each law that was successfully condensed would add a hint of dazzling color to that ball of light. Following that, Ji Tianqing started condensing the 6 great celestial deity level laws. Time passed silently. He was immersed in condensing laws, his mind undistracted. It had already been 10 months since everyone entered the ascension pool. Everyone ended cultivation one after another. Just as Jiku said previously, everyone broke through to the celestial deity realm. Even everyone's strength realm, she basically guessed it right too. Ji Wushuang was the first to end cultivation. 3rd level celestial deity realm, grasped 5 kinds of divine Tao laws, successfully condensing a godhead. Qian Yu and Black Dragon ended cultivation soon after, a month later than Ji Wushuang. Same as Ji Wushuang, they were also 3rd level celestial deity realm. However, the 2 of them grasped 7 kinds of divine Tao laws, successfully condensing a godhead. Following that, White Dragon completed cultivation. 4th level celestial deity realm, successfully condensing a godhead, grasping 10 kinds of divine Tao laws. Before long, Jiku also completed cultivation. 5th level celestial deity realm, also condensed 10 kinds of divine Tao laws in the godhead. The last to complete cultivation was Yunyao. 5th level celestial deity realm, condensed 12 kinds of laws in the godhead. She condensed 1 more law than Ji Tianqing. After all, she already fused 6 divine beads. The divine Tao laws that Ji Tianqing grasped, she also grasped all of them. But her 6th divine bead was light divine power. Therefore, she condensed 1 more light law than Ji Tianqing. After everyone finished cultivating one after another, seeing that Ji Tianqing was still cultivating, they did not make a sound to disturb him. Staying on the spot to adjust his breathing made everyone feel bored. Hence, Ji Wushuang, Qian Yu, Black Dragon, and White Dragon all left, exploring the vast lightning pool. Everyone was very curious. Just how big was the mysterious lightning pool formed by heavenly Tao? What kind of profound mysteries were hidden inside? Also, the heavenly Tao lucky chance that Ji Tianqing mentioned before, what the hell was that? Just like this, the 2 people and the 2 divine beasts split up and moved about, cruising and exploring in the lightning pool. Roughly more than a month later, Ji Wushuang flew out several million miles. There was no one in the surroundings for several 100,000 miles. This curious baby, from the initial curiosity and longing, gradually felt bored. She only wanted to know how big the lightning pool was, and if there were other gorgeous sights. In the end, the lightning pool seemed to be limitless, forever without end. The sights that she saw were also unchanged. Purple lightning liquid flickering with lightning, layers of 7-colored divine light. There was nothing else. Not fun at all. Ji Wushuang gradually lost patience, pursing her small mouth, planning to return. But just as she turned around, she suddenly discovered that in the lightning liquid tens of thousands of miles away, there seemed to be a black light flashing. What is that? She clearly remembered that in the light purple lightning pool, there was a gorgeous 7-colored divine light, but there was no black light. Hence, curiosity drove her to fly towards that black light. 2 hours later, she flew tens of thousands of miles away before arriving in front of the mysterious black light. It turned out that it was a ball of black divine light with a radius of 100 feet. Like a whirlpool, it slowly moved in the lightning pool, bobbing up and down. Although this black whirlpool looked a little strange, even a little eerie, Ji Wushuang did not feel scared. However, Ji Wushuang did not feel afraid. After observing for a long time, he plucked up his courage and reached out to touch it. Chapter 2768. Swoosh. Ji Wushuang's small white hand had just touched the black vortex when she felt a powerful devouring force. The surging divine power in her body immediately surged towards the black vortex like a flood that opened the floodgates. This made her alarmed, instinctively wanting to withdraw her hand. But how shocking was the black vortex's devouring power? Her hand was sucked in firmly, unable to withdraw at all. Ji Wushuang's mouth twitched, and she could not help muttering, "What is this thing? Actually wanting to devour my divine power?" No choice, she had just broken through to the third level of the celestial deity realm, and had just condensed her divine spark. Her divine Tao foundation was not stable enough, and her control of divine power was also not perfect enough. In her anxiety, she only wanted to withdraw her hand as soon as possible, desperately erupting with divine power for this. But this way her divine power surged even more violently, increasingly pouring into the black vortex uncontrollably. In a short 10 breaths of time, 20% of her divine power was devoured. In less than a dozen breaths of time, her divine power would be completely devoured. At that time her divine spark would be damaged, and her divine Tao foundation would also be damaged. Very soon Ji Wushuang forced herself to calm down, muttering in her heart, "No, I absolutely cannot panic. Father and mother both taught me, the more important the matter, the calmer I must be." Hence, she no longer struggled in a panic, allowing the black vortex to imprison her hand. She also did not urge her divine power, instead using her mind to suppress the divine power in her body. This move was very effective. The surging divine power in her body was quickly suppressed. The remaining 80% of divine power became docile and tamed, firmly staying in her body. At this time the black vortex could not devour any more divine power, and its spinning speed also slowed down greatly. The black vortex's devouring power gradually weakened. Ji Wushuang carefully withdrew her hand, letting out a sigh of relief as if relieved of a heavy burden. "Too scary, I don't want to touch this strange thing anymore." Ji Wushuang rubbed his reddened little hands as he retreated. She could tell that the black vortex was not to be trifled with, but it was not some living thing. Instead, it was a special kind of power. She suddenly recalled the words her father said before entering closed-door cultivation. Her clear eyes suddenly brightened, revealing a look of surprise and anticipation. Father said before, the lightning pool only has 8 attributes of divine power other than lightning liquid. Then this black vortex was the 9th type of godly power. Could this be the heavenly Tao fated chance that Father was talking about? How could I be so lucky to have encountered it? Ji Wushuang already had 60 to 70% confidence in his heart. Instantly he was filled with joy and revealed a smile on his face. But she wasn't sure, and she couldn't do anything to the black vortex. Thus, she left a mark near the black vortex and quickly turned around to look for her mother. In any case, the black vortex was moving very slowly. Within half a month, it wouldn't be able to move beyond a radius of 10,000 miles. In the middle of the lightning pool, Yunyao, Jiku, White Dragon, and the 2 mythical beasts all ended their cultivation one after another. Everyone was reborn, their strength increased by more than 20 times. At this moment, everyone was gathered together, waiting for Ji Tianqing to finish his cultivation. Originally, the White Dragon and the 2 divine beasts were bored and went to explore the lightning pool. However, after searching for a month, they didn't find anything. The scenes that entered his eyes didn't change at all. After a long time, they felt bored and returned one after another. Everyone stared at Ji Tianqing with burning gazes. Seeing that his entire body was shrouded in 7-colored divine light, they could not resist guessing. Tianqing has long completed his breakthrough and reached celestial deity realm. His foundation is incomparably deep, stronger than all of us. He actually broke through to 6th level celestial deity realm. Big brother Tianqing completed his breakthrough a few months ago, and is currently condensing his divine spark. I wonder how many kinds of divine Tao laws he grasped. Before ascending, Master already grasped 4 kinds of laws. There are 8 kinds of divine powers in this lightning pool. Apart from star and spatial power, he can grasp 6 kinds of powers and condense 6 kinds of laws. Which is also to say that old Ji can condense a total of 10 kinds of divine Tao laws. No, it should be 11 kinds. Most likely, don't forget, the lightning liquid is formed from pure divine lightning, and can help him condense divine lightning laws. Just as everyone was discussing, a streak of 5-colored divine light sped over from afar. Still very far away, Yunyao and Jiku sensed a familiar aura and both revealed smiles. Shuang-er is finally back. This girl left for more than a month. She must be tired of playing now before coming back. That streak of 5-colored divine light was indeed Ji Wushuang. Before long, she flew back in front of everyone. She looked at Yunyao and Jiku excitedly and hurriedly shouted, "Mother, second mother, I discovered a black vortex that doesn't belong to those 8 kinds of divine powers. If I didn't guess wrongly, that must be a heavenly Tao opportunity. Quickly follow me." Ji Wushuang waved her little hands excitedly, urging everyone to follow her to find the black vortex. She looked like she was afraid that the black vortex would disappear if they returned late. Everyone was shocked. Then they revealed a look of joy and surprise. Black vortex? The 9th kind of divine power. If it's really the 9th kind of divine power, then it's extremely likely to be a heavenly Tao opportunity. I didn't expect that we didn't discover anything after searching for more than a month. Little junior sister is blessed with fortune to actually encounter a heavenly Tao opportunity. Everyone quickly calmed down and planned to follow Ji Wushuang to check the situation. However, Yunyao said, "Shuang'er, your father hasn't finished cultivating yet. Mother will wait for him here. Cuckoo, bring everyone to find the black vortex." Jiku hurriedly shook her head and said, "Eldest senior sister, bring everyone to check the situation. I'll stay here and wait for big brother Tianxing." The two discussed for a moment and decided just like that. Yunyao brought Ji Wushuang, the white dragon, and the 2 divine beasts to search for the black vortex. Jiku stayed behind to wait for Ji Tianxing. Of course, before Ji Wushuang left, she gave Jiku the direction and approximate distance. Not long after Yunyao, Ji Wushuang, and the others left, only Jiku and Ji Tianxing, who was cultivating in seclusion, were left behind. Day after day, another half a month passed. Ji Tianxing finally ended his cultivation. He finally condensed 11 Tao laws together and completed the condensation of a divine core. His divine soul, lifetime of divine power, and 11 Tao laws all condensed together, forming a thumb-sized divine core suffused with a 7-colored brilliance. The divine core's appearance was like a gem, but it was not round like a ball. Its surface was like a rhombus-shaped crystal. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that the surface of the divine core was divided into 11 pieces, each of different colors. This meant that his divine core had condensed 11 types of divine Tao laws. In the future, the more divine Tao laws he condensed, the more rhombus-shaped surfaces of the divine core. Back then, he was a peak divine king. His divine core was exquisite to the extreme and actually had more than 1,500 rhombus-shaped surfaces. In other words, there were 3,000 divine ability great Tao under the heavenly Tao, and he had grasped a full half of them. Chapter 2769. Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw that his surroundings were empty. There was only Jiku. Without waiting for him to ask, Jiku took the initiative to explain, "Big brother Tianxing, Shuang'er discovered the 9th type of divine power. It's a black vortex. I'll let eldest senior sister lead them there first. I'll wait for you here." Ji Tianxing was overjoyed. He asked in disbelief, "You really discovered the 9th type of divine power? Is it really a heavenly Tao opportunity? I didn't expect that the legends of the dragon and god realms were actually true." Jiku hurriedly nodded and said with relief, "Shuang'er is really lucky. She actually discovered a small black vortex in the boundless lightning pool." Bai Long, Qianyu, and Black Dragon also went to explore the lightning pool. They searched for more than a month but found nothing. Ji Tianxing did not waste any more time. He hurriedly got up and said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go and take a look." Jiku hurriedly led the way for him and flew towards the southeast. The two of them shuttled through the lightning pool. Jiku could not help but ask, "Big brother Tianxing, how many nomological laws did you condense during your breakthrough this time?" 11. Ji Tianxing answered without hesitation. Jiku nodded. "It's just as everyone expected." Ji Tianxing asked, "Everyone finished cultivating? How are the results?" Jiku answered truthfully, "They're all done. Shuang'er has reached the 3rd level of the celestial god realm, and has condensed 5 nomological laws. Qianyu and Black Dragon are also at the 3rd level of the celestial god realm, and have condensed 7 nomological laws." Jiku gave a brief introduction of everyone's situation. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction. It's better than I expected. Looks like everyone has gained a lot in the lightning pool. Especially Yao Yao, she actually condensed 12 nomological laws. The two of them hurried on. 10 days later, they flew more than 4 million kilometers. Ji Tianqing's divine sense detected the auras of Yun Yao and the others from tens of thousands of miles away. They are there. Let's go. Not long after, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke landed beside everyone. Yun Yao, Ji Wushuang, and the others were surrounding a black light vortex, carefully observing it. Seeing Ji Tianqing's arrival, Yun Yao and the others greeted him one after another. Ji Wushuang stepped out from the crowd and pulled Ji Tianqing's hand. He pointed at the black vortex and said, "Father, that's the mysterious vortex I discovered. This is the 9th type of divine power, and it should be the heavenly Tao opportunity that you mentioned. Unfortunately, we've all tried, but no one can refine it." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He pinched Ji Wushuang's cute little face and said, "Darling, Wushuang's luck is truly heaven-defying." Such a glorious and proud battle record could be said to have shocked the boundless heaven continent. Even the other 3 continents spread his legend. The entire divine realm spread his title, Divine King Jiuyuo. When they heard this, Bai Long and Qian Yu looked forward to it. Ji Wushuang was also quite impressed and full of curiosity. Yun Yao heard the key point and asked, in that case, that Divine King Jiuyuo was able to rise against the heavens because of this mysterious black light? Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "That's right. Legend has it that Divine King Jiuyuo's divine power is this mysterious black light. It can devour and annihilate all divine power. He can transform into an abyss that blots out the sky and instantly devour 100,000 heavenly gods of the great Yin divine race, and devour all of their divine power. He is invincible. The more heavenly gods he kills, the stronger his devouring power. To put it simply, he almost doesn't need to cultivate himself. He only needs to devour the power of other heavenly gods to quickly become stronger." Ji Ku, Bai Long, and the others were enlightened. "I see. No wonder Divine King Jiuyuo rose so quickly. Devouring the power of other heavenly gods without cultivating himself? This is simply heaven-defying." Ji Wushuang was also full of longing and could not help but say, "Wushuang doesn't like to cultivate in seclusion. If I can obtain this power, I can become stronger without cultivating. How good would that be?" She was pure and kind. Not only did she not like to cultivate, but she also did not like fighting and killing. Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. This mysterious devouring power has a heaven-defying effect, but it's also a fatal poison. Divine King Jiuyuo relied on his devouring power to defeat the great Yin divine race in 800 years and ruled over a dozen divine nations. He was dazzling and brilliant to the extreme. However, he was short-lived in the end. After only 200 years of being the Jiuyuo divine race's monarch, he exploded and died. There was no helping it. His strength grew too quickly, and his divine Tao foundation was chaotic and violent. There were many fatal flaws. Moreover, he was too conceited and arrogant. He offended many powerful divine races. In the end, he died tragically under the siege of several heavenly gods and turned into ashes. Chapter 2770. Ji Tianqing's story was short. The content was also rather rough or even crude. However, they were all smart people. After thinking for a bit, they understood the reason behind it and started to discuss it. Cultivating martial and divine Taoists is like building a tall building. One has to lay a good foundation layer by layer, until the building is completed. Only then can the building be stable for hundreds or thousands of years without collapsing. Divine King Jiuluo used the devouring technique to seize the power of other gods. His growth was rapid, but his divine Tao foundation was like a building that was built haphazardly. Not only was the foundation unstable, but the layers were also filled with impurities. There were even many flaws and loopholes. It's fine if the building isn't tall, but when it reaches a certain height, it will collapse. Yes, this analogy is very vivid. That's why cultivating martial and divine Daos requires one to take one step at a time. One can't be greedy for shortcuts. No matter how powerful a god king is, no matter how heaven-defying a genius is, it's just a flash in the pan. It's like a shooting star in the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. What's the point? It's a pity that God King Jiuluo died. If he was wise enough, he would have conserved his energy when he reached the peak and eliminated his danger first. Forgetting to fight will lead to danger, and fighting will lead to death. When Ji Wushuang heard the adults discussing, she couldn't help but pout, feeling somewhat indignant. She looked up at Ji Tianqing and revealed a reluctant expression. Father, are you saying that this devouring divine power will harm people? It's a fatal poison and we can't refine it? Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He explained, Wushuang, this is a fortuitous encounter of the heavenly Tao. It's a divine power that billions of gods yearn for even in their dreams. It wasn't easy for us to encounter it. How can we give it up? Ji Wushuang nodded and then asked, but you just said that God King Jiuluo was killed by this kind of divine power. Ji Tianqing explained patiently. God King Jiuluo's foresight, knowledge and ability weren't enough. He didn't have the ability to control the devouring divine power. He was born lowly and had been oppressed and enslaved by the great Yin God clan for generations. He had long hated them to the core. Therefore, after he obtained the fortuitous encounter, he madly increased his strength, madly slaughtering and taking revenge. By the time he was strong enough and discovered the problem with his body, it was already too late. There was no way to cure it, which led to his death. But we're different. We won't be as impatient as him, raising our strength without regard for the consequences. Only then did Ji Wushuang dispel the misgivings in his heart. His little face revealed a slight smile as he said with a nod and I knew that father would definitely be able to solve this problem. Yunyao smiled bitterly and reminded her, Shuang'er, we can't refine the devouring godly power. Don't be happy too early. Hearing her words, everyone woke up from their joy and looked at Ji Tianqing in unison. Yunyao's eyes were also full of expectation. She said earnestly, Tianqing, only you and Ku haven't tried it yet. Ji Tianqing nodded and said to Ji Ku, try and see if you can refine it. Ji Ku did not hesitate. He stepped in front of the black light vortex and raised his palms to release the 5-colored divine flame, which he injected into the black light vortex. Swoosh! In an instant, the incomparably violent 5-colored divine flame expelled the surrounding lightning liquid. With her as the center, the area within a radius of 1,000 feet became empty. However, when the 5-colored divine flame entered the black light vortex, it was immediately swallowed. There was not even a spark. She had already expected this result, so she was not discouraged. She released her divine sense to refine the black light vortex. After 10 breaths, the result was out. It was still useless. As soon as her divine sense entered the black light vortex, it was completely swallowed. Next, she tried her best and tried several methods. The result was failure. I can't refine the devouring godly power either. Ji Ku shook his head helplessly and retreated into the crowd. Everyone's gaze fell on Ji Tianqing. His expression became serious. Under everyone's gaze, he walked to the black light vortex. Everyone had already tried the 5 elements, star, ice, wind, and other godly powers. He did not waste time trying. He directly released the earth transformation and godly thunder laws. Swoosh! 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 3 godly powers of different colors flew into the black light vortex. In the blink of an eye, the 3 godly powers were swallowed. Not a single drop was left. Ji Tianqing failed. He released an invisible divine sense and slowly approached the black light vortex. After 10 breaths, his divine sense was also swallowed by the black light. He failed again. Next, he forced out a drop of divine blood and injected it into the black light vortex. He wanted to use the divine blood to refine the devouring godly power using a secret technique. However, after 15 minutes, the divine blood was swallowed, and the secret technique also failed. Ji Tianqing frowned. His expression became even more serious. Everyone was also worried. They secretly transmitted their voices to discuss. The heavenly path opportunity is right in front of us, but we can't refine it. How worrying. Brother Qianxing even used the divine blood. But he still can't do anything. What should we do? We can't just look at the heavenly path opportunity and give up helplessly, right? Even Master can't refine it. What kind of fortuitous encounter did Divine King Jiuluo have back then? Everyone was worried and anxious for Ji Tianxing. Their hearts were filled with unwillingness. Even Ji Tianxing clenched her small fists and silently cheered for Ji Tianxing. At this moment, Ji Tianxing thought of an idea. He took out the sword of burial of heaven. Swoosh! He poured godly power into the sword of burial of heaven, and used the power of the divine sword and the origin stone to refine the black light vortex. However, the terrifying sword light released by the sword of burial of heaven and the power released by the origin stone were also swallowed by the vortex. Everyone's expressions became more and more serious. They felt even more despair. Ji Tianxing was silent. He did not give up. He thought for a moment and took out the heaven-mending orb in his mind. He flew toward the black light vortex. Swoosh! The heaven-mending orb released a dense white light that enveloped the vortex within a radius of 10 feet. Immediately, the black light vortex spun faster and crazily swallowed the holy white light. Ji Tianxing did not stop it. He continued to urge the heaven-mending orb's power. The black light vortex was like a bottomless pit. It swallowed the holy white light even more crazily. Seeing this scene, everyone sighed inwardly. Their eyes and mood became gloomy. Obviously, the heaven-mending orb was useless. However, Ji Tianxing did not give up. He was still urging the heaven-mending orb's power. He even quickly absorbed the godly power in the lightning pool and transferred it to the heaven-mending orb. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Everyone was no longer worried and anxious. They had already given up hope. And at this moment, the black light vortex swallowed a huge amount of holy white light. Seemed to be full. The speed at which it swallowed the holy white light gradually slowed down. The spinning speed also became slower and slower until it completely stopped. Seeing this scene, everyone's gloomy eyes became bright. Hope was born in their hearts again. Ji Tianxing also felt relieved. However, he did not dare to relax. He continued to manipulate the heaven-mending orb's power to refine the black light vortex. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.